From the Finance Committee, June 8th, 2023. I'd like to welcome everybody, Commissioner Opp, Commissioner Mason, Commissioner Slater, Commissioner Winters, Mayor Davis. Um, David's out there, our big audience. David, you can move up. I mean, anyway. Um, Commissioner Alford will say the pledge, and Commissioner Winters will say the blessing. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for this morning, a beautiful morning, opportunity to do your business for the public. Blessings of what we do. Remember those that we work for, work with, what you would have us do.
Thank you, guys. So this is the meeting that we basically take the mayor's proposal and make any edits, changes. I remind you that if you do wish to make a change as we go through here, and we'll go through it pretty much page by page, but we'll go pretty quick. If you want to make a motion on a fund, in your motion, please state the fund, the account, and if it's on the expense side, the line, and what you want to, what your change is going to be, whether you want to add or delete, something like that. So make sure you put that in there so that the mayor and those guys and Lori know exactly what you're trying to do, what the motion is, so there's no confusion. Make sense? Fund, account, and line, if you wish to make a motion when we get into it. On our agenda items, we kind of pre-started a little bit. Road Department revenue. Mayor, we'll start with that, and we'll try to figure this out and do the best we can. As we were just talking about, I got this via email, I think yesterday or day before, and I was under the impression they would be here to explain, but it sounds like you've got information as well. So if everybody would turn to Fund 131, page 103, and we'll just do the best we can with it and whatever we can do with it. Page 103. You guys all have a copy of what I'm looking at right here, the handwritten, right?
Yes.
Lori, right here. And as we just was stating before we started the meeting, she's indicating on this that the balances, the beginning balance and the total funds available and her fund balance in year should be changed. But as just stated, in order for these to be changed, because these are just summations, you add up a lot of numbers in order to get this number.
Can I say something on?
What changes?
Do you remember when you got this? That could be the deciding factor. Literally,
Lori, if you'll check my email when she sent it over,
you could do that. That might answer a question, because I remember getting something like this, and then I explained to her how she had to do all the number changes, and then what I've got is that. I believe you got this before this latest version.
I know it's the latest thing I got, so if there's anything
But you probably didn't get what I'm passing out, because
okay.
Okay, that explains it. Just throw this one away, please.
Everybody?
And let me pass out something, and I'll start, and I think it'll make sense here in just a minute.
It's not the first time I've ripped up a report in this meeting.
Relax.
Great. What you will need to do is take that and place
Budget Monday. I told you Monday there would be changes coming, so that's the entire budget right there. We're talking about road department, if anyone listening or watching.
all right.
And let me explain what they've done, if I can. Is that all right?
Yeah, please.
Once you have it in front of you, just don't even worry about inserting it yet. Just look at what I gave you, because it's stapled. But on Monday's version, the one in your book, they had a fund balance that met the requirement. Of course, back in March, they were told not to put in raises. Well, then whenever we know what the raises are gonna be in the proposal, we go to put the raises in, and it put their fund balance below the requirement. So I went back to them on several occasions, and what you got is a version of one of them. And I explained to them that they needed to go down the estimated totals line, update their revenues in the estimated one, put a more realistic number because the budget numbers were from a year ago. So they went through the estimated numbers, made changes of what they think the property taxes, say for example, the property taxes came in at 2,857,000 instead of 2,877,000, 20,000 less. So they put in the realistic numbers in the estimated column like they needed to do. And then they went on to the expense part of the estimated column, and a lot of numbers got lowered. In other words, they might have had $10,000 budgeted, but only spent $9,000. So in the estimated column, they changed it to $9,000. That's why when you look on page 105, you will see that the estimated revenue is a little more than was originally budgeted, and the estimated expenditures is a lot less than was originally budgeted. Follow me? On page 105. So they brought in 5,899,000. They brought in less, but they also they spent a lot less. So they end up ending the year with $2.1 million fund balance is their projection. End of this year is 2.1, their projection. You carry that forward then to this year's budget, the request, and it gives you at the end of the day, June 30th of next year, $1,049,000 with raises in the budget. So they've got an 11% budget projected, only required to have 7. So they're in good shape because of making changes in that estimated column. Now, please, if you don't understand what I'm saying, stop me, because I'll be glad to go over it again or differently. I don't want to be so detailed that I lose you, but they updated their estimated revenue. They updated their estimated expenses, sent them to me. We put them in the budget form, and you will see mine's, it's just like schools. Mine is exactly like theirs. You see, I didn't change anything, but I had to work with them to make changes so that they had a proper fund balance.
It may not matter, Mayor, but where did they make adjustments on the revenue on the property? They're basically two sources of money is us and the state.
Well, yeah, they get a lot of taxes, and they've got. If you go to those, we'll go down if you want to. Page 103.
I just wondered if it's our money that we're giving them or the state's money that they made the changes, or both.
Well, on page 103, the total, according to them, their total local revenues came in at 3.2, and they had budgeted 3.1. Page 104 is your state money, and according to them, it came in at 2.6, way down. But when state money's way down, they just don't spend it. You see, I mean, you'll see things up there like public works grants. Originally, they budgeted 1.5 million, but they didn't get it, and then it's not in their expense budget either. So then when you go to the expense side of it, which is page 106 to 110, most all of those estimated numbers are less than budgeted. They didn't spend near what was budgeted. Page 106, they spent, let's see, go to a total line. 3.1 instead of 3.2. Page 108, they spent 726 instead of 765, 172 instead of 203, and on like that. The biggie, of course, is employee benefits they saved on, and they saved a lot on capital outlay, according to them, and these are all their numbers. But their estimated total for capital outlay is $20,000, but they had budgeted $1.8 million. So their expenses went way down. And so when you, on page 110, you take those total expenses, which is 6.3, bring that over to page 105, and I hope it matches. Yeah, page 105 under the estimated column, it's 6.3. So they've got their expenses way down, left them a $2 million fund, $2.1 million fund balance this year. Carry it forward, ends out next year being $1,049,000. Again, sort of like schools, all I look at is to make sure their fund balance is proper and that they've got their raises in there. And this version has the raises in and meets the minimum on the fund balance. I can't justify any of the expense lines. You know, you may want to spend more on this or that, but usually on roads, we treat them like schools and we don't get that detail in it as long as they match. And then the other thing that's mentioned on your agenda is maintenance of effort. They did a maintenance of effort, I guess you have a copy of it. I didn't bring one, but they got CTAS to do a maintenance of effort for them and they did, it worked.
All right.
They do a spreadsheet to show the maintenance of effort, and somewhere along the line during this budget process, I saw that. Did they not send it to you, Lori? I don't.
No.
It's another one of those things. I don't know what they send to you and what they don't, but they did meet the maintenance of effort. Again, the only thing that caused an issue from Monday till now is the fund balance with raises was too low. But when they updated their expenses, then the fund balance isn't too low. So it's okay in the version that I just passed out. And that's what should be in your budget, because you can't approve a budget that has a fund balance too low. We've done that with schools years ago. We'd say, hey, your fund balance is too low, you're going to have to go back and redo it. And that's basically what I was doing with them.
All right. So basically what the mayor just gave us, take out pages 103 to 110 in the proposal. I put it in a folder, but wherever you guys have it. And I'm going to put this as the
New page 103 to 110.
This
Can I say one
is
more thing while I think of it, Myron?
version 2.0.
They also, I said the only thing that was wrong was the fund balance, but they also had revenues projected. We've done throughout the budget, schools and everybody, 2% plus ratio. We're showing growth, the ratio takes it away. They showed growth, didn't do the ratio. And I had to tell them to change that, because when we send it to the state's going to say, you didn't take the ratio into consideration with the road department. So that's why the revenue number had to change. So again, I told them to make that change, and they did in the version I passed out. See, this year they brought in $2,857,000. Next year, they're projecting to be about the same, which is fairly even throughout the county. We're hoping that 2% plus ratio is flat. Now I'll shut up. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that in case you
No,
get
you're
real
good.
into it.
I don't even know really if there's anything else to do with them. The maintenance effort, if I understand it, just to repeat, make sure I got it. They've got it set. It's been met, so there's not going to be any findings on that. But how much more? So when I think of maintenance effort, there's a certain number that we have to meet. And if we go over that number, then that's the new maintenance effort. With them, it's an average of 5 years. So I guess my question is, if it's relevant, how much more over the maintenance effort amount that was the bare minimum did we go? So if I was like, I only want to meet their maintenance effort, how much more did we?
From memory, it's not enough to play with. It hasn't been for the last couple of years.
So
In other words, you couldn't take it away, because then your estimates next year may be off a little bit and you mess up.
But we don't want to go like crazy, and then our maintenance effort from here on out is too much. So what you're saying is razor thin.
What I'm saying is what?
It's pretty.
Yeah, it's razor thin. I didn't understand your words there.
Sorry.
And what he's talking about, they take three they use certain revenue lines, 3 audited revenue lines, the budgeted revenue, the current estimated revenues of those lines, and then next year's budgeted revenues. And those 5 have to average, we have to meet that average in next year's revenue lines. We didn't cut anything, so we've never had a problem there. But with years like this and not any growth, it causes it to be, as he just said, razor thin. But whenever I saw it, they got it done, and I saw it. It's just been a month or two. I don't remember that much about it, but it did meet it, and it was done by CTAS, so I didn't question it.
So I can imagine if they have any additional revenue comes in that's not part of the budget, we'll just have to amend the budget at that time.
Yeah, you can always do those amendments, but I think with this version I passed out, you're doing what you need to do. Your fund balance meets policy. You've been told that they meet the maintenance of effort.
Yeah, so we're good.
And the revenue, if the state were to question revenues when we send it, because they have to approve the budgets. After you all approve it, we send it to them and they bless it. And I think all of that passes everything. So I'm confident. I thought they'd sent a later version, but that came before all this. Now, I remember getting a handwritten one and having to explain, you've got to go back in your computer and change all these numbers and then send it to me. Because, see, I make them send it to me so that I can tell you I'm using their numbers. You
Right.
see what I'm saying? In school's the same thing.
So if they
So-
would have updated us that they have new numbers from you, because what we got was the latest thing.
Yeah.
I was thinking that we were going to
And, and possibly yesterday when I got that and I got it worked in, I replied and said, everything looks fine. I'll take care of copying it to the commission tomorrow. So they probably assumed I was bringing it. I don't know. I didn't talk to them anymore.
All right. Any questions on that? That should do it with roads. The only other thing is the governor's extra money. That'll come in later.
Yeah, and the way that works, they have to show that they're budgeting what they did this year. It's what's that word the state used? You can't supplant it. And then they will be getting, whether it's $1 million, $2 million, or whatever, and at that time, they will amend revenues up, and the state aid project lines up also. So there is more money coming to the road department with amendments whenever they get it.
All right. Let's go, there's nothing else on roads. Let's go over to Opioid Fund, which is the new fund that the mayor talked about Monday night. I believe that's Fund 111, which is page, give me 1 second.
Page 81.
All right, so, this is a new fund, and it comes with, I'll use the word strings attached to it. Which we, I guess, grateful. Mayor, the little bit that they talked about in Gatlinburg is, this is over years, but you probably won't see more than your first year. So it may be the same for the first couple of years, but it's not ever gonna be bigger than this. But we got the 460,000 that you see there. I'm on page 80, by the way. Estimated total of 2022, 2023. You see the 460,332.
Right.
That was already in there. That's in our current budget right now. I guess the 201, 823, for a total of 662. That's in our account right now. Is it your guess, Mayor, that 662 is kind of what you're using as an average from year to year?
Well,
If what they say is true.
that's true. It'll go up and down, and that's a complicated thing that you probably don't want to be explained. It's probably going to be approximately 600,000 every year for the next 18 years, but it won't be exactly that amount. But the good thing about it is the money is supposed to come in the spring like it did this year. And so every year when we do the budget, we'll know what has come in. Like this year, we know that 662 has come in, that's in the bank, and now we're approving how to spend it. So next year, if it's only 630, we'll know that at budget time, and we'll do a 630 budget. Does that make sense?
Right. So where I'm going with this, and you may or may not agree, is we probably need to be on the safe side and not spend every penny, especially if it's recurring. Because if it comes in less, even, 10 or 15,000 is recurring, then we gotta go find somewhere else if we wanna keep whatever that is that we spent the money on.
Well,
So I'm just asking for some caution.
that's true, and on that policy thing, we'll do that later on too, if you want to add that. On this one, 662,000, 125,000 is fixed. But we know we're going to get way more than that
Yeah.
for the next 18 years, so we're not gambling there. Now, we wouldn't want the whole budget to be in salaries. That's what he's saying, because it'll go down. but no more than we're putting in salaries. Every other line there can change next year. The only lines that can't change are those first four lines, and first five lines. Then after that, it can change, and we will adjust those next year according to what came in. Next year may be an up year, but I don't know that. And on that, reason we say we don't know, some companies agreed to spend upfront and gradually get less every year. Some companies agreed to spend less upfront and get bigger each year. Does that make sense? So you've got the two things happening in that court settlement. And that's why the state or nobody else can tell us the exact dollar we'll get each year, but we know we'll get it for the next roughly 18 years, 16 to 18 years. And it'll be approximately this amount.
Any questions on that? Raise your hand, or Commissioner Winters, please.
Mr. Mayor, there's a lot of work going now on intervention to students and intervention in the community to stop the actual customers of drugs. That is not too much. This more is looking to me that we're looking at drug treatment through juvenile court. Is there potential funds in the future to be for counseling service for kids? For all this
I'm glad you mentioned it, and maybe I didn't explain it good. That is what I perceive you all doing with that 201,000.
Oh.
We did not address that. Now, he learned in his meeting that they recommend appointing a whatever you call it committee and all these things. We have met with those kinds of people already, but we didn't want to propose how you spend it or who you spend it with. But what you've got in this budget now is you've got a portion of it for detectives, people to stop it, hopefully. You've got a portion in there for drug court, both adult and juvenile, to hopefully stop it or control it. And then you've got some in there for things like the Narcan and stuff, the drug supplies. But you've got 201,000 that, as of right now, when you approve this budget, I can't spend that because that's other contracted services that you will approve how you want to spend it. You may want to do it as drug counseling. I'll use an example. Drug counseling with Hiawassee Mental Health. Okay, you want to spend $50,000 with them, sort of like you did the housing program.
Right.
You will approve that, and you've got $201,000. I encourage you to make sure it's on treatment type things because that's the one. They don't really tell us precisely how to spend it like ARP. They just want it to be on drug intervention, stopping drugs, preventing the drug use, addressing the people that are using it. And so all of these things together, we're doing that. And as long as we're doing all of those things, it's kind of similar to the drug fund that we used to have, and it's doing little to nothing. But the drug fund was all about intervention. This is supposed to be a lot of it for counseling. And so you guys will decide who you spend that with, and that'll end up being about a third of the budget will be for that kind of stuff.
Yep. Commissioner Alford? You guys know?
On this 340 there, medical services, first responders, mental health, can we add the 911 people in that also as part of the medical?
As far as I'm concerned, any first responder can request it. That figure may have to be amended later, but that I don't care. The sheriff has some help there. If they make the case and they want to, I don't care. They're considered first responders.
Okay.
But yeah, so anybody that's first responders can do it, whether it be fire also. Most of it's probably going to be ambulance because they're the ones that's getting there and seeing it and narking them and those kinds of things. So we're talking about, anytime there's let's say the accident where people are killed, especially when kids are killed, people that have to deal with that, they have their debriefing meetings, but there's been a need and really a need now for debriefing of these people. So anybody that's involved, if it was a mass casualty event, 911, fire, law enforcement, ambulance, all might be using that line. And that is a guess because we don't know how much it'll be used, but that's sure better than what we've got now.
Second question, looking at 108 investigators, did you talk to the sheriff? He says 2 positions for the sheriff. Is that something that he's agreed to, or do we need two investigators to me is not enough.
But
Well,
I talked to him about it if you didn't.
yeah, he's the one that suggested this if we felt like we could. These people, these two, used to be in drug fund doing drug interdiction. We put them back in the general fund, and this allows us to put investigators in the opioid fund and pay for them. And 2 is the ones they can't be out investigating burglaries and things like that. They've got to be pretty much drug investigators, and that's the 2 that he has. So that's how we're funding them, just like we used to do them in drug fund. But yeah, there was never a question that he suggested taking those 2 out and putting them over here.
Well, I'm not questioning whether we need 2. I'm just saying, is that going to be enough? To me, 2 is not going to be able to get the job done.
Commissioner Alford, if I may, Mayor, when I chatted, they're going to be assigned to the district DTS team,
Yeah.
whatever. So they're going to report to him. They're his employees, but they're being DTS,
The drug task
Drug
force.
Task Force. So their day-to-day operations of what they do are with the other counties are going to have their drug officers as well. And I asked him,
Part of that team.
McMahon and Monroe have it. Because they got opioid money as well.
Yeah.
So they're going to fund it. So the DTS team is going to have about 5 or 6 new officers funded through the opioid money from multiple counties. That's what I understood.
Yeah, and again, it's very similar to the way the drug task force used to be. State also kept a lot of the opioid money, and we're assuming that they will use it to also fund the drug task force things. I can't speak for them, but they have money for the interdiction. Also I don't remember how the percentages were, but not all money came to counties. They kept some for their use. And the plan and the thought process is that this drug task force will become an opioid drug task force funded by various counties, their opioid money, as well as probably some from the state. So that's a complicated answer to your question.
Not really. I understand the drug task force. You'd see them all the time. You never see them anymore. You never hear of them. You never see them doing anything. Question whether the drug task force is even operational.
Well, they're not like they used to be. I mean, if you look at their budget, we had to take the employees out and put them in general fund. Used to drug task force, but they used to stop a tractor trailer on the interstate, make $1 million drug bust. Those don't happen anymore. It's done differently now. So, the drug task force has basically dwindled. And that's why I only use it as an example. We foresee the opioid task force, and that's me calling it that. It's not a name. Kind of being the new future of what we're doing. We're using similar mechanisms to fight the opioid crisis. That's on the interdiction side of the coin. Can't use all the money for that in our fund, but we can use some of it. But yeah, the drug task force, there's not much in that budget anymore. It's still in your budget, but not much there because it's always been 100% paid for by money they got, and those aren't happening.
Well, that's some of the other question. Our drug money, which is dwindling down to next to nothing. We don't get the money anymore because the state intervened, and they're getting all that money now. I guess somebody is, but we don't get any of it.
Well, they don't tend to send $1 million in cash in a tractor trailer truck like they used to either. They do it differently.
I'm sure they're probably still doing it. They just don't get caught anymore.
They've Venmo it now.
Who's over the drug task force?
I don't even know now. Steve was at one point, but I don't know who
I think
is
it's
now.
Bill Cherry. I think
Is it Bill Cherry, the latest?
Bill
Okay.
Terry, still over that. I just wish we'd know more about what they're doing, but that's nothing we can talk about on budget. But to me, you never hear of it. You never see them do anything, and I'm just wondering if they're how active they are. Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Alford, I would encourage you, next time you have a law enforcement committee, you call it, invite them, come down there. And they had a multi-county meeting up in Athens a year or two ago. District attorney, everybody was there, and they kind of went over that. But one of your law enforcement committees, I'd invite Mr. Cherry.
Yep.
Bill Cherry. Mayor, I'm sorry, Commissioner Winters, and then I'll come back to you. You guys let me know.
This opioids one thing. Fentanyl is the big killer right now. Fentanyl. in the adult world and all. I'm hoping that the movement for opioids can expand at some point to fentanyl, because that's immediately killing individuals on the street, and also our law enforcement people that have to deal with that, and our medical people that have to deal with that. If they're trying to help people with fentanyl, and they get that in their pores, then they have the fentanyl action. So that's something I think as a commission as well as a county government, we should be looking at some point what the state's doing and how we can connect with that. I don't know if opioid will ever morph into that or not, but that's a
Well,
killer program.
We're allowed to use the money for we've got it there for the Narcan. Well,
Yeah.
that's really
It's
fentanyl,
biggie. Yeah.
but we're using opioid money.
Yeah.
It's just that we've gotten the money in the name of opioids. We don't have anybody to sue on the fentanyl, so we'll never have a fentanyl budget probably. But they allow us to do those things. I mean, a drug interdiction detective,
There.
if he's investigating you for opioid and he finds out you got fentanyl, he's going to do that too. So it's going to, yeah, I think so.
Thank
But the good thing is we got some money in the name of opioid to use for.
Commissioner Mason, Commissioner Slater. So
Another-
finish this up.
one
Oh, I'm
other
sorry,
question.
Commissioner Alford, please.
Supplies and material. I was talking to the sheriff the other day. He says more normal gloves don't work anymore. They have to buy these special gloves to cover the fentanyl stuff. Can they buy those type gloves out of that $4.99?
That would be in 413, but they could, yes.
Lock.
413.
The 499 is for adult drug court. The 413, Narcan will be mostly for ambulance, and that figure's slow. The sheriff already gets it. I'm not sure how, but he already gets Narcan. But yeah, he probably could. I mean, we could, when we go to order Narcan, we might get $7,000 worth of Narcan and $1,000 worth of gloves. You know,
Oh,
if
they
that's
like,
the
he
request.
said they like $12
Yeah.
a box.
I know. That was just a recent thing. There was another response to that too, but I don't remember what it was. But anyway, the 413 would be the supply line that we'd be talking about.
All right, Mayor. I think that's a good overview of the new fund, opioid. My last thing is, I'm gonna go through this real quick. 160,000 you're putting into drug treatment, juvenile drug court. I think Judge Morgan sent us some kind of information on that, right?
That is their request to fund juvenile drug court. If this budget's approved, I will tell them to come back with a
Alright.
detailed budget that I will bring to you that you'll amend a regular budget for
So
them.
basically, it's earmarking at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. So in medical services, what he was just talking about, 75,000. Adam, the other day you and I were kind of chatting about that. I think it's good info for everybody. There's gonna be, this is for somebody like you just described, Mayor, somebody's just having a tough time dealing with whatever. And I'm absolutely 100% for that. But 75,000 is, in my opinion, I don't know, is a lot. I mean, that's a lot of hour sessions talking to somebody.
Yeah.
And you kind of broke it down, cost analysis of about how many hours that would buy us, right? I mean, where I'm going with
on
this
which line?
is like, we got X amount of, we got what, 200 deputies, we got 65 EMS. I mean, this is plenty for everybody to have, right? I mean,
It would be, the number that we broke down was over 1,000 hours.
1,000 hours of therapy, I guess that's what we call it.
But
right?
that 75 is not just for actual counseling, treatment, or therapy. So there's some
there-
other expenses that are built into that.
Like, what other expenses built into?
There's several layers to the program that we're putting together. The first layer is a peer support system, where there will be some training expenses for individuals at each of the agencies, the 4 first responder agencies. Once those folks are trained and certified, there aren't any ongoing expenses on that piece. What the peer support system will be is an actual peer or colleague that is trained to recognize when there may be issues, is trained in the ability to talk to someone, sort of that first line of support, you would say. The second piece is the debriefs that the mayor mentioned that happen after some of the more intense incidents that they respond to. There are a lot of free resources for something really catastrophic, something really big that the state will come in with a team. That's free, but there may be some expenses involved with bringing in someone locally. Those are, I won't say few and far between, but the expenses for that piece would just center around bringing in someone for one or more agencies. And then the third piece, and the bulk of where the money will be spent, we hope, is on the actual treatment. So the money that would pay for a therapy session for someone who would need that sort of support long term.
That's okay. The period thing, I like all that, and I guess there's a percentage of the 175 that you've got kind of in mind for each one of those programs. But the therapy piece of it, I'm assuming Mayor or Adam, that's gonna be outsourced. In other words, we're not gonna hire a therapist and make them a contract or anything like that. I mean, they're not gonna be an employee, I guess is where I'm going. We're gonna think they have, Park Ridge has some kind of unit or something like that. I don't know. In other words, it's gonna be outsourced.
We've
And
done some already.
Yeah, we've started to reach out and build some relationships with providers. The goal here too is for our first responders to not pay a dime, right? So we're negotiating and talking with the providers that might be interested in either giving us a cash price that's lower than their typical price. The average cost of an hour-long session is over $100 typically. Yeah. And so their cash prices are usually quite a bit lower than that. And then also, if they were to take insurance, many don't, but if they were to take insurance, this program would cover the copay, if you will. So the
that was
idea.
Gonna be my next question is, does
yeah.
the county health insurance? Because I know my company that covers mental health.
Our insurance does offer some things there that's not often taken advantage of, but there is some things there. This will be then for if you need more than that.
Oh, in addition to? No, okay.
Yeah, that's how we would think it would work.
So it sounds like we're going to earmark 75,000, and you guys are going to come back with a more detailed plan and educate everybody on the plans and how it's, and then that'll be a number that is somewhat recurring. I mean, for the budget.
We'll probably know more next year how much we really need there, but this is a shot in the dark for the first year, yes.
All right. The next one is the 201. That's the one you said that we probably need to sit back and wait and make better decisions on. I'll put it that way. The 65,000 is drug recovery. Is that Judge Freiberg's court?
Right. That's adult drug court.
Okay. And he gets funding from grants already.
Yeah, he has a pretty sizable drug court grant. This will be able to allow drug court to allow more of that kind of treatment.
Right.
And it's needed, according to them.
Right. And per our quote-unquote agreement a couple of months ago, first 10,000 of DUI is going to go to ankle bracelets, and then we're going to split 50-50 with probation and this court. We're still going to do that?
I assume. I mean, yeah.
Okay. But it's good, 65,000. Then the last one we talked about. Where does ATS come into this?
What's that?
That's that's out of your 200,000.
Out of our 201?
Oh, the bridge? I didn't know what you said.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Programs like
ATS.
that, yeah, that's where you'll decide how much you want to, if you want to do the what's it? Anyway, the bridge, if you want to include them, that would be in the.
We've had some organizations reach out because this money's been advertised and talked about. So we'll take the requests that have come in, and that's what you all will have a chance to look at all of them and decide how you want to spend the 200,000.
That's an example of somebody that will be.
That's why I'd heard that name. Anything else? All right, so that includes opioids, which is its own fund. Yeah, please. Yeah, Mr. Crawford.
Does the drug task force, do we rent them an office? Who's paying for that? Out of what?
I'm not sure. There's quite a bit of expenses that are paid out of the drug fund for them, and I believe that's one of them.
What was the question?
The drug task force has an office that we rent to them, and I was
Oh.
wondering who pays for that office.
It's out of the sheriff's drug fund. The utilities and the lease for that building are paid out of that drug fund.
Could that possibly be paid out of this opioid money then?
In theory, it could. We talked about that. The balance of that drug fund is around $143,000.
Yeah, but it's going down
and
quick.
it's
yeah.
going down. So at some point, whether it's the general fund or this type of funding, that decision will have to be made. But for this year, the sheriff and the mayor just agreed on us using the money for the two existing drug detectives that were there.
I guess rent must be called other contracted services. I'm looking at the drug fund budget, page 95 is what he's talking about. They've got $30,000 there. I assume that's for rent. But to answer the question, everything except for those salaries is still paid out of the drug fund. And like you said, it's dwindling. That's why we had to a few years ago accept the salaries, and now we're putting them in this one
That's the
eventually.
reason I wanting to see if we could move it to the opioid.
Yeah.
It's
And
It saved $400 and something a month. That's quite a bit of savings.
yeah, all of the expenses that are in the drug fund could theoretically be put in the opioid funding, but again, their decision was to just take it piecemeal until we needed to.
yeah, they're okay this year. They're going to have a decent fund balance still, but gradually, eventually, we probably will need to do that.
Right.
Well, I'd rather do it on the front end, not have to worry about it in the future.
So, Mayor and members, let's go to page 94 real quick and spend just a minute or two on that. We normally don't spend too much time on drug fund because it's not much we can do with it really. But page 94, you see Fund 122. That's the fund that's been set up since I've been here for drug fund. It used to have quite a bit in there, but I think the previous administration hit it pretty hard. But you see the revenue side of it, the 400 series, different total revenue 62,000, and it's just an estimate right there. His fund balance is 135,000 beginning this budget year. You see that's his ending balance right there. So his projected revenue plus 135 is basically 198. Call it 200, and his expenses 83,005. Which is outlined right here on page 95. So it's not much to it, Commissioner Alford, but that's kind of, it used to be $500,000 or even more, but it's dwindled down
That's when
over the years.
they quit allowing them to take the money and keep it.
Yeah, the 15,000 for utilities and 6,000 for law enforcement equipment, communication, drug control payments. 30,000, stuff like that in there. So that's pretty much the drug fund. It's you want to move what the revenue or the expense? So in other words, have the opioid cover the cost of like that 15,000 utility and the 6,000 law enforcement equipment and 2,500 for communication, 15,000 for other contracted services, and 30,500 for. Did I get that right? Drug control payments. I'm sorry, 30,000 for other. You want to move that over to? Well, okay. What would be the benefit of that? You would, yeah, I get what you're saying. In other words, if you take the expenses,
Why do we need to pay
You take the
our
expenses.
taxpayers' money for that?
That's not taxpayers.
No,
The drug
there's no
fund?
tax money.
Well, it isn't. It isn't. It's still our money.
It's
in his
confiscated.
budget.
It's money collected through the courts or confiscation for the drug fund. And that money is dwindling, I'm not arguing, but there's still sufficient there to do this. We can't convert any of those revenues to opioid because they're for drugs. So as long as they have enough to pay for that, I don't see the benefit, and it would be taking away from things like the bridge, those programs that we still need to do a percentage of opioid for treatment overall for the citizens, and that's where the bridge and those kinds of things come in. Uh, if we took it all and paid for the drug fund, then where would the drug fund money go? It's not going to go to the sheriff or us. It's got to be in the drug fund. And so we may have to eventually do some of those things, but we don't need to right now. I'm not arguing with the idea. It's just why do it now when there's money there, and let's spend it on the real purpose, opioids. Opioid doesn't need an office, uh, and those kinds of things. So let's spend it on the treatment now, and then eventually, if we're forced to take on more of those, there's always going to be some court money coming for drugs. The confiscation line is what's dwindled. They don't get to sell the cars like they used to and bring in a lot of money, and they don't have the confiscated money like they used to either. So he's not wrong. I'm not arguing with what Commissioner is saying, but we just don't need to do it now. Let's see how much treatment we can do, and we may find we don't need $200,000 next year treatment, and at that time move it over. Is sort of what our philosophy was at this point.
Mainly, I'd like to see that rental fee go over anyway, if nothing else.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner. All right, that concludes opioid again. I've already, watching the time, probably need a break here in a second, but what I usually do for this is the first one, is we're going to go over the funds that are fairly quick, that we'll spend maybe 10, 15 minutes. Then the general fund is where we spend a lot of time on there. And the mayor went over his proposal Monday night, basically on debt services and 172 and 189, but we'll take a little bit more in-depth look at it. So if you'll turn to page 150, looking for 151. Where's 150? Start. $142. Thank you, Commissioner Slater. Well, page 142. This is debt services, as the mayor said. And I actually, Mayor, somebody must have been watching on the television or the video, because they asked me 6.9. 143. Thank you. 6.9, and that kind of encompasses, if you say this a lot in your speeches and stuff, a lot of that is still schools, but it also is going to have what's non-schools that we did, the EMS, not EMS, but I don't remember the energy program.
The what program?
ESGs thing.
Yeah.
Man, I went brain dead there for a second. Anyway, all right. So, since 151 gets property tax, as you're going to see in all of the funds that get property tax, it's pretty flat. 7 million, 7.7 million. Then you have the trustees collections, circuit clerk. Clerk and master interest. Although, Mayor, I was doing some, I'm not going to change anything, but I just think it's interesting. I was doing some calculations. That 30,000 should be a little bit more with the interest rates as he's investing. But
Where are you?
I'm on page 143, and I'm looking at interest and penalties. That's the That's not that's the interest and penalties that someone has to pay because they didn't pay their property tax, right?
Right. That's not his
That's
invested money.
not the interest off of principals.
Well, if you're talking about revenue on interest, all of Mike's interest goes to general fund and 189.
29.
So that's where the number has grown on interest. I think that's right. 189 in general fund.
You're right. Sorry. For a total of county property taxes, all that said, 8.4 million, 50,000 bank excess tax, does that bank excess tax have to go into 151, or can it go into a general fund? Do we have any discretion on that? We've never talked about.
Yeah, I don't remember the history. I know it goes into various funds, probably by statute, but I can't swear to it because I think that predates me.
Okay, so add the 50,000 to it, and it takes it up to basically 8.5 million.
Right.
Then you got the investment income, I guess, a little $2,000 there. And then hall tax, they did away with that. Our friends up in Nashville and TVA, so forth. We can go through this all. For a total revenue 8.7, and then our fund balance is 15.8 for a total of 24.6, and our expenditures, once we have that, that's what we're budgeting to pay principal and interest over this year, 9.8, with a fund balance of 14.8. And we have to have, according to your thing here, 9 million for 13 months worth of payments. So this is a very healthy fund. So you go over to the expenses, and I'm not going to go into. I just asked this question, Mayor. Most of these payments on principals and bonds and interest and all that we see on page 145 and maybe 146. This is what. No, it's not 145. This is what you get from our Cumberland Securities, and they basically give you a schedule of where we're at on that and their estimates, especially on the variable. We talked to, what's his name, Christopher, that our exposure with variable rates is not, I mean, we have to watch it, but we don't have to be super concerned about it. But all that, just for the record, has been baked in. It's already in here. I put that in form of a question.
What was the question again?
Cumberland Securities is giving us the numbers that we need to put in here.
Mm-hmm. Followed you that far, but what was
Okay.
the question part?
Well, the part that I'm worried about is the variable piece of it.
Yeah, the variable is definitely up, and there's a couple of lines there that possibly reflect it. I think what's saving us there is the principal's going down enough that it doesn't cause our budget to, you know what I'm saying? If you owe less, even though the rate went up, you don't paying more. That's happening a lot of times. But bottom line of what he's saying is Cumberland goes through it and they give us those numbers. Some are up, some are down. It's hard for me to explain why, but it is a little bit concerning but only about 40% of our debt is variable. Over time, we really save there, but we're at peak time now for variable. But the fund balance, the important thing about the fund balance is if somebody says it's hefty, which healthy, as he said, it is, but it's less healthy. It has gone from 16.2 to 14.8, so it's on the downward trend. And with the variable rate there, that's anyway.
But as we pay debt down, you would think it would go down. I mean,
Yeah,
there
but
should
every
it
3 or
should
4
be
years,
relative.
we jump back up on debt too.
As
So
long as
right
we don't
now
as long as we don't go buy
Yeah.
more debt.
if you don't, it'll go way down. You're right.
Okay, so you mentioned the other night that you're going to put more money, and we'll get to it here in a second, 172, to go after the interfund loan for Spring Branch.
Right.
I guess my question to you is, is there an opportunity to go after the other two interfund loans a little bit more than what you proposed?
Well,
We got the Spring Branch. You're going to add some more to it, and I applaud that. But we also have the ESG and we have the workhouse, because from what I understand, trustee has to adjust his rates because he has to get the most he can for the loan. So my question is if we put an extra 100,000 or whatever towards the workhouse or for ESG, is that something we could do?
Yeah, we can, since those are
And
through,
not put us in any I mean,
since they're through Mike, we can. I would hesitate to do it on the one that comes up in the fall, because that's the beginning of the budget, but there's another one that comes up like in June next year, and if we're in good shape at that point, then pay extra on that one is how I would tend to do it. I've already been paying more on them,
right, we,
a little bit more, but not a decent, you know what I'm saying?
I just say that because I believe he's gonna have to go up on his just a tad.
Oh yeah, his is gonna jump this time too.
Let me stop you there. Lori, do you remember, I know you hate when I ask you questions, but do you remember last time we got a payout figure from Deborah over there?
On the interfund loan?
Let me scratch that question. Can you get a new payout figure on the workhouse and
ESG.
ESG? Because you've already put money in for Spring Branch. To go.
Yeah, I've put extra there for Spring Branch.
Does that make sense to you guys? I'm sorry, Commissioner Slater.
So I have a question about on page 145, still under account or Fund 151, and it's the first one, line 301, accounting services, where last year it was 2,500 and next year it's 25,000.
Where we at? What
Page 145,
Page 145.
line 301, the very first one. It went from 2,500 to 25,000.
Good catch.
I must be, you're saying page 145?
Yeah, Mayor, the county up there next to the trustees commission, I think.
Page 145, first line is hotel motel tax. Are we on the same 145?
No.
Page 145?
Yeah.
Who, I do?
Yes, 172.
So go to the 151
Next
fund.
page.
Let's see. I've got that as 144, by the way. Could be a mistake. I'm trying to think if there's a reason for that. Trustees commission goes up. That's based on the amount of revenue. Accounting services. What is
Is
accounting
that the
services?
portion of the auditors to do?
Yeah, but that doesn't justify that figure. It could just be a
Typo?
yeah, it could be.
Okay,
I'll
I'll
question it
take
for
that
sure.
extra money then.
I would love that. I hope that is the answer. I'm
It has to
not
stay in
sure.
debt service though.
I can't think of a legitimate explanation for it, so hopefully it is.
Okay.
Good catch. All right, so, Commissioner Slater, all right, Commissioner Mason, anybody? So, in February or March, Mayor, we could revisit whether or not we can, add a little extra to the payments for Workhouse and ESG.
Yeah. One of them, I think, though, if you're going to go to the trouble of getting the payout amount, Lori, go ahead and ask, because one's due in like November and December, one's due in May and June, so get that too. It's hard for me to keep straight which is which, but one of them would be too soon for that, but the other one, yes.
Yeah. Weird now, that we did those 2015, 2016, so we should be about halfway
Yeah.
through them, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I think
And all it would take, at that time, do an amendment to do however much you want to. Sort of like I'm budgeting to do on the one for the industrial park. I budgeted an extra 50,000 this year, but next year, do y'all remember how the interest rate works on those? Our variable rates change monthly. Really, they change daily, but they change monthly as we pay them. That's a true variable rate. The variable rates that I have with the trustee, they're variable annually. So every year we have to agree on a new rate, but then that stays the rate for a year and then next year. So it's been a year since his changed, and during all these rate increases, it's going to catch up with us this year is what he's referring to there. Mike's already gave me the warning, and it's gonna catch, it's gonna be a big increase. Uh, the downside to that, when they start going down, his will probably be a little high, because his won't go down as fast. But anyway, anything we can pay on those 3 loans, I'd love to do. Now, that does help your fund, your HCI fund, don't forget. So as that
That's right.
rate goes up and I gotta pay more to Mike, that gives you more in your HCI fund.
Hey, you stole my thunder. That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. We're paying
So,
ourselves, so when he
We
gets
are paying
August,
ourselves on that, so, but, I'd still love to get away from them, because from the auditor's point of view, it's a nightmare. Uh, Their fund balance, it always scares me, if somebody goes to the audit, and they can find a fund balance that's a lot less than our report, because they subtract all that debt out. But then they tell us it's okay to add it back to report. But from an accounting point of view, it's a nightmare. I'm telling you, this was an issue when we first started it. After we started it, we found out. So that's why Mylan knows I want to get rid of them. I want to pay them off as soon as I can. I don't care what HCI gets. I don't mean that literally, but I want to get rid of this debt. So, yeah, when she gets the payoff and lets me know when, since she's going to get it, I'll let her do it. Uh, we'll come back and we can amend it and do a lot more.
very good. So,
And do it before the interest rate goes up, is what I'm saying, you know. But
yeah, we'll have it. And Lori, if you'll, I know this is long term, but the February Finance Committee, put that as an agenda item, so because I'll forget. Please, yeah. Wait, hold on a minute. Workhouse, 1.425. 1.9, and you're adding, that's the 172 fund. 2.7. So if that was in April, you've made payments since then, I'm assuming, right, on those?
probably one
down
due
just a tad
now, I
bit.
would say.
But if we can you're hitting the Spring Branch with your 172 proposal, and the 1.425 on Workhouse, if we can hit that hard as much as we can without hurting the fund balance of 151,
Yeah.
I'd be all for it.
Keep in mind, it's going to hurt your HCI fund, but again, I'm all for it. Because I want to get rid
well,
of
I
it.
mean, when we make the payments,
Well, they will be no longer getting that higher interest rate next
oh, well,
year,
he's
though.
going to turn around and put the money in something else.
He can't get,
So he probably won't
we're
get
paying more than he
we
can
probably
get.
won't. He probably won't get what we're paying,
Yeah.
right?
No. No, HCI's done well with this program, I will say that.
But this is property tax. Huh? Yeah. To see how much we can put towards. I mean, we already got budgeted in here an amount that we obligated to, but the terms of the interfund loan is we could pay if we had the money, we could pay them off right now with no penalty.
Right. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I don't have a problem with it.
All right, good. That's 150. Anything on there, Commissioner? Yes, there was something if you need. Not really. All right, 172. Mayor went over that pretty. Please.
For Thrive? What do we get from that?
You're on page 147.
I'm on our page 147.
There, Thrive. I'll let you take that one. The regional group.
Yeah, that's off the cuff. I don't know if I can give you an explanation. Back at the time we did, Thrive is a regional organization that works to improve a lot of things for this region. It's not a Bradley County thing, it's a regional thing. The big part of their time and money is spent on transportation improvements. Very instrumental in bringing the thing on 411 highway that's in Georgia. You know what I'm talking about, as a means of getting things off of the interstate.
The rail car.
So they do a lot of those kinds of
Staging
things.
area.
They're basically funded. Of course, they get grants, but they're basically funded by industry and organizations. And they ask that cities and counties. It's not a membership thing, but just make an amount so that when we're talking to these various people, we can say Bradley County, Hamilton County. And so we do a token amount of $3,000 there for that reason. I haven't given you a good answer, but off the cuff, that's all I can think of.
That's
It's an
fine.
organization that's been going on for a few years. Chamber's really big with them, working with them. They came and did a presentation about a year or two ago, and they would be better at doing it than me. I've attended their meetings, but I'm not a board member or anything like that. So it's a good organization, and we just try to have a token thing there.
Lori, if you extended an invitation, it has been like 2 or 3 years that
Probably.
they've been here, the young lady. In September, October, one of our
Yeah,
meetings there.
that would be good. And what's her name, Adam? Chairman of the board is the lady from McKee Baking, which is a Bradley County person. Connie Vaughn, yeah. Connie Vaughn came, her and the, whatever the person's title is, of the organization, came and did a presentation. They have a good PowerPoint presentation that they show people too. So, yeah, we
They
probably
also-
need to do that again because the newer commissioners probably have never seen it.
They also do a lot of lobbying for broadband. from what I understand.
They work on all kinds of things, but from a regional approach, which is what the federal government wants. I lost my train of thought what I started to say there. Yeah, broadband, transportation is their big thing, but broadband, anything that from a regional approach that they can do to benefit the region. So you don't necessarily see it just in Bradley County, but when they do something to improve interstate traffic, for example, it benefits us, but we can't say that's. I've rambled a lot on that one, but we'd be happy to bring them to do a presentation sometime. And this fund is for community development, and the only thing that we pay out of this fund now is the industrial park. Whenever it's time to do another industrial park, hopefully this fund will have paid off that debt and will be built up. But a percentage of hotel motel tax goes, we don't put tax money in this, just hotel motel tax. And then it funds right now just the industrial park and that token amount.
With hotel motel tax, and you're estimating 382, and that's all off of the private act percentages.
The division is off of private act. Probably that one is an actual, in other words, tourism gets whatever we collect, their percentage, industrial development gets whatever we collect, their percentage, and then we put some in this fund and some goes to general fund, a small portion. That one, this year grew more than 2%. We're always conservative for next year, but we're projecting it to go up 2%. Most of it goes to where it's dedicated by the private act, like he said, though.
And just FYI, I believe the city has implemented a hotel motel tax as well, and they get to decide what they want to do with it, apparently. All right, any other questions on 172, community development? Thank you, Mayor. Next, real quick, 189, the mayor went over that. And my 8 years on here, this is probably the skinniest 189 we've ever had, because we've always had projects going on, but it receives property taxes, the mayor said, and goes in there. The contributions and gifts, the 800,000. If it's more than that, I saw where you're putting the difference in 116 in the landfill. Let
me see what I put there. Let me refresh my memory right quick, okay?
I'm sorry, I'm on page 148 for our budget. Mayor, is your numbers different than ours? Is that?
Seemed like an amount ago, but it's all right.
And there you see the 815,000 investment of the principal that the trustee does. That's up.
What he's talking about is we take that contribution, most of it goes in the capital projects, a little bit goes into the landfill account. Okay, here we go. What it is, I'm projecting it to be 1.1 million next year. And if it is 1.1 million, I'm 800 in the capital projects and 300 in the landfill. The year before, it was actually $1 million that went into this count, and only 200 in landfill. Then this past year, the 800 went in this count and the 356 went in landfill. So one year we put the extra in 189. This past year we put the extra in the landfill, and I always budget it to be 8 and 3. So we'll see. We never know for sure how much that will be until it comes, but somewhere around 1.1. It was 1.3 this year. And it was 1.1 and a half this year, I guess I should say. Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We could,
I do.
what did we do in landfill? Oh, we had spent some down out of it, and we were trying to refurbish it back, and that landfill account there then is for the next tornado or whatever, which we've used 3 times so far.
That
But
would be my question, Mary. I mean, do you have a number that you're trying to build up to on there?
on the landfill,
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it, some of the money going over the landfill, but to a certain degree, if it builds up, it's diminishing returns. I mean, we're probably not where you want it to be, but I was just wondering if you had a number in general that you want to build up to.
let me look at it right quick on that one, okay? The landfill pays a lot of things too, like KAB and stuff like that.
Yeah.
As well
And
as the
your
recycling centers.
hazardous waste day and all that.
Trying to find the fund balance page. Yeah, for example, if we didn't increase the expenditures, if it stayed flat, it needs to be right around 2 million. And as long as we keep it there, if we're not spending more than that, we started spending some extra things out of it a couple of years ago, and I can't remember what offhand.
Well, monitors.
The monitoring's one thing, yes. But to answer your question, roughly 2 million is what.
So would you, maybe, it's not being far-fetched here, but if you get to where you're comfortable on the fund balance for 116, the landfill, the money that's coming from them doesn't have any strings attached, to the best of my knowledge. The other funds like fire fund and other could use some help.
I could give you the history on
what I'm
it.
saying is I wouldn't be opposed to, once you get comfortable where you want it to be on 116, putting it at 121, 127.
Yeah, if it grows a little bit more this year, next year, and I'm glad you mentioned it because I wouldn't have thought of it. I can propose putting the surcharge anywhere. We've always put it in 189 so that we could say it was used for education buildings. That's what you all wanted. And we've always done that. Next year, for example, we might need to put it in fire. We can do that. Fire's getting very razor thin, to use your words a while ago, on the fund balance. So that would be an option that I could look at next year. But the reason it's in 189, which is a budget that only you all can approve spending from for capital items, is it's always been used for, like this year, the 1.2 million that's going to go for Bradley High School's addition, that's coming from 189, which is mostly coming from this surcharge. So we've always been able to say the surcharge from the landfill goes to provide capital for schools.
And it has. I
And
mean,
that was something you all wanted to be able to say. So that's the history on it. But then his question is, yes, it could go somewhere else.
right, which, I mean, I'm all for building up 189, but if there's no strings attached, because fire has the handcuffs of only getting property
Right.
tax for ourselves, so we'll deal with that later.
This year, you sort of gave me a challenge to build up 189 all we could because you
I
wanted to
think-
be prepared for the next school project, and so that's why we've.
And you talked about that the other night. I think we look at the revenue on 189 with all that property tax on there. 1.6 million. You had a fund balance of 4.4.
Growing.
Fund balance comes June 30th, 24. This is all projection is 5.8, which you talked about the other night, which is probably the highest I've ever seen it.
Yeah, because we moved everything to ARP this year, just about.
And I'm glad you mentioned that.
Won't be able to do that next year, but we did this year, and so it's really sitting there and growing.
Is there a
You-
reason why the servers for the finance, and I know they're required, can't be paid out of art money as well? I know it's only 35,000, but
There's not. It can be. It's just.
I'll do the paperwork.
Yeah. It's up to you. You can. We've put things in ARP that I would never have done if you'd made me God for a day because of the reporting, but to try to, but I didn't. Those three servers. It just so happens those three departments, key departments, roads, trustee, and accounting, all need servers the same year. So it's good that we have a place to pay for them. But yeah, they could be moved as long as they stay in our box, and we still have some there.
I think there's. Is there anybody else who has to have a mega server that you know of out of data? I mean, you're the county's IT department. I had
We don't go solicit them, but that's the only three that said they were in need of this
is
year,
the
and that's an
sheriff's,
expensive thing.
Dwayne not asking for. We'll look at his. We'll look at his in a second. All right. Any questions on 189? I think that's a really good position to be in on that.
By the time you get
So that's-
Bradley built and you've got your $1.2 million commitment there, this will be, that's not going to happen probably till next year, so you'll be in the $6, $7, $8 million range is what we're thinking in the long range plan for school projects. So you do them one at a time. Do Bradley, this is building, then you come back and you do them like that. That's the ideal thing to do. You know, everybody talks about Manton County not being debt free. Well, until recently, they never built a new school either. But they do additions exactly like this, and that's why we set up the 189 fund a few years ago, really for this kind of stuff. Let it build. When there is a need, then you've got it to pay cash with, and so it's a great thing. We've also got into doing cars and other things with it because it was a logical place to pay for those, but this year we're not. So,
Well, the theory behind that though was if you put it in the elected officials' budget as a line item, then if let's say you gave them $20,000 for something and it came in at 15,000, then they would always go find a reason why the 5,000 needed to be spent. So this way, it kind of keeps that
yeah,
kind of happening.
and that reminds me on the ARP. This year, there's so many things in ARP. So many departments have things in ARP, but we're already starting to tell them they can't. They're going to have to send that request to us. We're going to do the PO. We've got to do the ARP. These 20 departments can't start shopping and spending from ARP. That's going to get everything out of whack. So we're going to try to keep it. But that's why I try to keep those kind of purchases to a minimum. It's not just the paperwork, as you say. We've already had some, well, on the striping, for example, they said, "What's my what line do I pay for it out of?" I said, "When you have a striping bill, you send me the bill. I'll get it PO'd and taken care of because it's an ARP fund. You're not going to have access to it." So if somebody were to ask you about it, that's how we're going to try to keep those ARP expenditures reined in this year, because if we don't, it's going to really be a nightmare for ARP. The only good thing about Biden is we got ARP money. That has been a tremendous thing. They sent it to us, they put it in our bank account, but the reporting is tough. And we still have that option out there. If you screw up, you must pay back. Well, we don't want to get there, and so it still scares me.
I'm gonna chat about that in a second. Real quick on the money that we've earmarked for the science wing. It's obviously not in your proposal, and I just heard you say that's because you don't anticipate having to use that this year.
Let me see. That's in the ARP money, isn't it?
My bad.
I think,
it's
from
the next
memory.
one down.
You're challenging my memory today, Marlon, but I think it's in the ARP.
Well, you passed. All right.
I think you'll find it there.
All right. I'm ready for a break. I'm sure you guys aren't. It's 10:30. That's 151, 172, and 189. Those are the kind of easy funds. I mean, they're important, but before we get into the general fund. Yeah, and we're gonna. Where's my gavel? So how about a 10-minute break? Go do what you gotta do. We'll come back at 10:35. Does that sound good? We are in recess. All right, call the meeting back to order. All right, so this is where we go through the general fund 101. We'll go over the revenue quickly, and then we'll go through each account. And for the newbies, basically go page. If there's anything in there that you have a question on for me or the mayor, or if there's anything that you want to make a motion on, just say, say like we normally do in finance meetings. Make your motion, we'll get a second and vote on it. I guess Mayor or Renee, you guys are keeping track of whatever. All right. Any questions on that? All right. So, starting on page 2. No, wait, I'm sorry. We gotta get our page numbers right. Page 1. Property tax, as we said, with all the other funds that are receiving property tax, they're flat this year. We've talked about the ratio study a lot, but you do see there. Total local taxes, 26.3 million, and then there's an itemized list for the next couple of pages of fees or whatever that come in. These are projections that come from respective elected officials like Gala and the trustee and stuff like that. They're usually pretty conservative, so that it's better to obviously project a little low and come in high versus the other way, project high and then come in low. The one that we've talked about over the last couple of years, I'm on page 3 now. Patient charges 43120. I think we should keep it at 4.5 million. Is there? I'm sorry, Commissioner Slater, please.
But they haven't hit that number, have they?
I don't believe they're going to be pretty close this year.
We think they'll be close, but they keep collecting through July for this year, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but we think we didn't increase it because we don't think they're gonna be over.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think there's any new fees or anything in addition to it, so, the one thing, Lori and I were chatting about the other day, Mayor, you may not know, I may know this. Years ago, we set up the sale of gasoline internally, and we set up an amount that they needed to collect up to $5,000 for maintenance, because we ran into a situation where I guess the pump or something up there needed some maintenance, and everybody was like, "It's not me who has to pay it; it's somebody else." So we basically said take a little bit off of each transaction, but we capped it at 5,000. And we were looking at it the other day. We don't know if they got to their 5,000 or not. It's not that big of a deal, but if you knew that or not, it's no biggie. But there is money in case that ever happens. But I don't see any new fees or anything in there. All total, when you get to page 6, the total revenue in the general fund, when you take the ending balance, which becomes your beginning balance, total revenue with those two, 56.6 million, with expenses at 45,579. You told me one time, I forget what that 297,000 is, one-time capital purchase, Mayor, but
Where we at?
I'm on page 6. It says less one-time
Okay.
capital purchase. I forgot. You told
No,
me. But I forgot.
what she tries to do, and it's not to the penny, but what she tries to do is separate operational money from capital, one-time money. And so when it says one-time capital purchases, that's throughout the budget. And that number's a lot less because we take so many out and put them in ARP this year. Remember when I said I took most one-time purchases out? Like if you was requesting a car, that's where the car amount would show up. But
That's
if
right.
I took it out and put it in ARP, then that caused that to go down.
So that's going down because of ARP as well, just
Right.
like 189. All right. Then total expenditures 45.8. Then we get into our fund balance, reserve fund balance, unreserved fund balances for fund balance projected of 10.7 million. And if I remember correctly, you said that puts us at 19%.
Yeah, it's roughly 19%, but lower than it's been in a long time. I had to use some fund balance this year in order to do the raises and stuff. So when people's asking you for more money, we ate into the fund balance to be where we're at now. It's, and that's mainly because of the flat revenue. Now, some lines revenue will look like they went up. We do have a lot of grants in this budget that are offset by revenue. So that increased revenue, but it also increased expenses. Health department grant, or there's several in there. Let's say we got a $2 million grant that's in the budget. That 2 million caused our expenses to grow. It also caused our revenue to go up. But somebody say, well, why didn't you keep the budget cut back? Well, when we take that $2 million grant, we gotta fund it. So it caused the expenses to go up in a lot of cases. There's several grants like that. But bottom line is 56,569, 56,620. That's about as flat as you can get. And I'm hopeful, but who knows with the ratio? Will it be better than that, or will it be a little worse than that? But everybody's on the same page, schools and everybody, that's how they budget it. So we'll see how it goes. We've never had a ratio this high before, if anybody's wondering. What's the big deal about the ratio? It happens every 4 years, is it?
Right, yeah.
But it's never been this high before. Before we ate it, nobody even talked about it, and we went on usually until the one time. But it is a big deal this year. We've tried to do everything we needed to do and still work with the ratio. But in doing that, we did have to eat into the fund balance a little bit. 20% is my goal on fund balance. I'll shut up, but I'll say one more thing. Change whatever you want to, but please don't lower the fund balance anymore. Move it from somewhere if you want to move it. I don't have a problem with that.
Unless you specify revenue.
Because that fund balance, and maybe that other commissioner referred to fund balance when he was talking about rainy day fund. It is not a rainy day fund. That's what we pay bills and salary with for 6 months. So you total it up. We have $1 million payroll every 2 weeks. 6 months, we do 12 to 15 million in payroll between now and the time taxes start coming in. So you got to have that fund balance. It's not really a rainy day fund. It's really not. It's needed. About 20% is needed. Now, if you had a 30%, when that would be.
I agree, man. When we get to about September, the end of September, and see where we're at, and then just in time, property tax comes
Probably
in.
start. And we have in previous years, because we didn't have that 20%. I used to say 15. It needs to be 20 now because, everything has grown, salaries and everything. But we have borrowed. I
Well,
don't want to
this-
borrow, but we have borrowed just to do payroll. And it's not really because Brandon County's in bad shape. It's cash flow, if you don't have a
Right.
sufficient fund balance to cover you, because schools get their money in monthly or quarterly or whatever. Roads get gas tax in monthly or quarterly. City gets a lot of sales tax in. It comes in monthly, but ours is mostly all property tax. And even though Mike will brag about his number growing, and it has, thank goodness, but it's still a fraction of our property taxes. So most of them don't come in until December. And most of them is January and February, of course. So that's what that fund balance is for, and that's why it takes the 20% roughly to get through. I mean, there'll be people, utilities got to be paid during times, not just payroll. Utilities, all those things. There'll be people that swear they got to make so-and-so purchase. They can't wait. We try to hold all capital purchases till December, but there's a lot of them that they have to make now. And so if we didn't have a fund balance, of course, the state requires 10%, but that's unreal. If we didn't have a fund balance, and again, road department can shut down. We can't shut down. So got to have a fund balance. Please don't make it any lower. That's all I ask, and I'll shut up. I appreciate it.
No, you're good, but I was going to ask you, is there any tax anticipation notes going to be needed?
No, that's what I'm talking about. In years past, we have done that. It used to be done a lot, but I was dead set on getting rid of that dilemma. It's a cost. A tax anticipation note is when I go to that fund that you think's got too much money in it, I can borrow from it to do payroll, but then I've got to pay it back. That's a tax anticipation note. We have done those in recent years, in previous years, but not in recent years. I want to be able to brag, say we don't borrow money to do payroll. We have enough in fund balance to do it. That's how it should be. And
I just think it is a healthy fund balance in 151.
do
All right.
what? I didn't understand that.
All right, so that's the revenue. Any questions on revenue with respects to the lines there, our fund balance, beginning and end expenditures on that? Any questions on that? Nope. All right. So now we'll go into the accounts. County Commission's up first. Imagine that. And there's not much to it. It's not the most exciting account in the world, but that 599, we hit that, and you can see where it's kind of itemized there. For those of us who've been around, you now see that we used to have, go back and look at the old budgets, the liquor money that we had to put in there in case we either won the lawsuit or I can't remember why we had to put that in there, but it's gone because that lawsuit's been settled and stuff like that. 20,000 for insurance deductibles. We usually use that up. Mental evaluations. That just FYI, that mental evaluation is court ordered, right? So you can't use all that mental stuff that we talked about with opioid. So if the judge orders that 5,000 miscellaneous, 23 warrant writer supplement. That's new, isn't it, Mayor?
No, it was new last year.
New last year. I'm trying to remember. Is it 23?
Remember,
miscellaneous is 23. Warrant writer is 63.
The warrant writer's 23. The total is 63.
Okay. I got to draw a
Equals
little
63.
line here. Line.
To bring you up to speed on the warrant writer, remember used to we did that out of the juvenile department, and then we had all those issues with judges saying you can't do this, you can't do that. We still could have done it in juvenile, but then they decided they didn't want to do it in juvenile, so we came up with another way of doing it, and there was nowhere to put the cost except in your all's line item, so that's why that's there. It has been working well the way it's been done for the last year, but it did start showing there last year.
Okay. And medical. You've got that number 11 represents the number of commissioners that are taking up on it, or the number of employees, because that includes Lori, right?
Right. 15 potential, there's 4 of you that don't take it.
Right. Any questions on that? We're going.
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry. Chairman Cry, please.
I have a couple of items, and one is on the warrant writers, 23,000 this year. Last year it was 12,000 roughly. Why? Where's the difference?
I think and I'm telling you from memory, but I think we started in the middle of the year last year. I think all that controversy was going on. There was not been a change in the amount we pay. It's just that it may have been a partial year last year.
Okay, that's.
Do you remember if that's right, Lori, or anybody?
I remember the controversy with the deal, and the judge didn't want to do it over there.
Yeah, and
The magistrate.
Long story, but I'm pretty sure, Tom, that happened in the middle of the year, and at the time it was in juvenile budget, and we paid for a period of time from that juvenile budget, and eventually it came out of theirs and went here.
Well, you've already answered it.
Yeah.
Mid-year, and
I think it either started mid-year or it got moved from juvenile in mid-year.
the other question I had or comment was line item 207 medical insurance, $97,020. That's the medical insurance for the 14 commissioners plus Lori.
Right. That's it. What that tells you there, look at the 15 and the 11, that tells you there's 15 of you that could take it, 4 of you aren't taking it, so that's the cost of 11 now.
Okay, I was going to, as I have every year, denied taking mine. I've turned mine back in, but I was going to contribute it to the VA Honor Guard. But if I don't think that's an option since you've already taken.
No, it's the amount that take it. That's what's funded. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Dave. We'll get it somewhere down the road. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anything on there? Anybody wish to change anything on there? Seeing none? All right, moving on. Next page is Board of Equalization. That is basically when Stanley has his appeals and he has to call the board together. This is their compensation. It's obviously not much, but anything you wish to change on that? If not, we'll proceed to page 9, the beer board, the mayor's favorite board.
Why you say that? I don't even
I
drink
was
beer.
trying to be, it was an attempt at joke again, and I failed miserably again. But I think they do a good job. I don't know. They're dealing with some of the things. But, Mayor, is there an increase in there for them?
No. No, and you asked me a lot of memory things. From memory, that's when it takes a resolution to change, isn't it, I believe?
Oh, I don't know.
By law, they get paid, and I believe it takes, I can't just plug in a raise.
Okay. Moving on to archives.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yep.
We have added a couple of things there. We're setting it up for archives was just the office downstairs. Now it's downstairs and down the street. So we have put money in there for utilities and a couple of things. Operating lease, where you're going to pay for that system you're putting in. It's in the process of being put in. There's money there for building maintenance. So there's a couple of expenses for the Church Street location that are now in archives. So archives is 2 locations, still just one person, but 2 locations. And then what we plan on doing is bringing that 45 million out of reserve into your general fund. Because we can use reserve to pay for archives.
45 million.
45,000, I'm sorry. 45,000, I'm sorry. That's that rainy day fund that I'm not supposed to talk about. Don't tell Bobby. But anyway, the important thing is we plan on coming to you to approve taking 45,000 out of the reserve fund, putting it in your general fund to pay for the cost of the entire archives.
Okay. So we got an amendment coming. All right.
I think it takes an amendment to bring it out of reserve, so yeah. But that's part of the plan.
Anything on archives and Church Street as far as anything capital projects? So the build out, the shelves and all that, that's done. It's fully operational. How's
Yeah,
that?
well, it's fully. The last thing you all did was to approve putting in
The Knox box. Or
the
whatever?
Knox box is installed, putting in the burglar alarm and all those things. That's in the process of happening, and then there will be an ongoing, and that's in the budget here, an ongoing operating thing on that. We will, to justify reserve, we'll have to be able to say that it's only used for archives, but the whole top floor is archives, and the only thing that's been occupied on the main floor is archives. So as long as we keep it like that.
So the agriculture people are totally gone.
Right.
The whole building is archived.
Whole building is archives.
Oh, okay.
And expansion, when they say we don't plan ahead, we got expansion for archives. But we're having to heat and air it and all those things ongoing. So all of those things, that's why the utilities, that's just a guess. Utilities for that building has always been in my budget and causing me to go over. Now we're pulling some out until we have an accurate number and putting it in there. And then it'll be paid for with the reserve as long as we don't get the budget too high.
Commissioner Winters, please.
Did we try to do something on fire prevention for that?
Yeah, what was the
Sprinklers?
latest on that?
I know there was some problem.
I think they said we didn't need the fire alarm system's going in, the monitoring, but not the sprinkler. That's what it was, yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else on archive? Seeing none, moving on.
My note here, I already said, I just now saw it. It says, in July, amend 45,000 from reserve, so yeah.
All right. Oh, wait, when? When in July? Because I didn't think we needed a finance meeting in July.
Well, we can do it in August. It don't matter when we do it.
Yeah, remind me to announce that.
Yeah, we don't need one July the 3rd, you're right.
Yeah, because we're going to approve that budget that night, so I canceled that meeting. Anyway. County Mayor, your budget, anything on there, anything you want to cut?
And-
Oh, that one took.
And really, the only changes are insurance and those things, so
Very good.
basically the same.
Next one is personnel office. I think you're gonna have to help us understand this one a little bit because Position eliminated and moved to 52110 for training, 26,744. And, you go over to account 52100. If one is expecting 26,744, there is no training.
There is no what?
Um,
That line went up in that number. What was that account number again?
52110.
Line 162 went up the amount we moved over there. Then that's so that we come next spring, about the time budget starts next year, we hope to be able to hire somebody that'll go through the budget training to prepare for the finance director to retire then at the end of the budget cycle next year. And I'm paying for it by eliminating this position in personnel. Personnel was 2 people. It's now 1. The additional duties were basically had to do with health care, insurance, those kinds of things. So we've brought in the broker, and we're asking them to do more of that, and they have agreed to. For example, we had a fire department rookie school started this week, and Monday when they get signed up for insurance and all those things, we do them in groups. Normally that was done by this person, but from here on, it's done by the insurance broker, and she was the one that did it this week. So we went to the broker and we said, look, you're the insurance agent for health insurance, so we need you to start doing these things. And they agreed. So we eliminated the position, moved the money over. I'm trying to prepare for next year to train for finance. Nobody's been added yet. There's not enough for a whole year. There's enough for about a half a year. There's what it amounts to.
Okay, I guess I get confused when I see the word training, and then there's a line for training, tuition and training, but that's not what you're really talking about.
What we hope to do if we can find someone is have them actually go through the process. The budget process is more complicated than anybody can imagine. And there's nobody I can hire. Lynn was as good as you can get, but there's nobody I can hire that could do it without having gone through the process. So I hope to be able to hire somebody that's good in finance that goes through the budget process, and that's the training I'm talking about. So it'd be paying for an employee for training.
I was going to say something, but it's not. Anything on? Oh, Commissioner Cry, please.
I guess it's my age, but I'm in a fog here just a little bit.
No, you're good.
We eliminate a position. We identify the salary money, and then we identify that it's being transferred to training. And then I go to the training line, and it's the same, I think, as it was previously. Where did the 26,000 go?
All right, possibly that explanation isn't clear enough. It says for training, but it should say for an employee to train. 51. What was that number again, Mylan?
52100.
51 what?
52100. Page
52
page 20.
If you look on page 20, the clerical line is increased by that 20-something thousand. That's to hire somebody to train. It's not for training. It's not to pay for a class. It's to hire someone to go through training.
That's 26,735 that was put into salaries.
Yeah, it was put in the clerical salary line. And what I was saying is come January, February, March, sometime another, about the time of next year's budget cycle, I would hope to have someone that I could hire at that time with this money to go through the budget cycle and train. So it's to hire somebody to train. It's not for training.
I'm cleared up a little bit.
But it's no new money. We moved it from personnel to accounting to do that.
I'm all for paying people. Part of it was a pay increase, the other is for the training that you're going to do. I'm satisfied.
Yeah, what I will have when the time comes, if this is approved, I'll have that 26,000. It's not 26,000. It's got benefits, but let's say 24,000. I'll have that to pay somebody to finish out the budget year to train, and then in next year's budget, I'll have a new person coming in to finish out that money, and then I'll also be paying out someone who's leaving in that budget year. So I'm trying to get prepared for that.
Budget, the position you eliminated, you're going to resurrect it next
No, I will not. I can't do that. That's what I've had to argue on that other department you just keep looking at.
That's what I was
When you
thinking.
eliminate one, it's eliminated.
Right.
I eliminated one 25 years ago, and it's still eliminated. Some of your people wants to bring somebody back and replace them after they eliminated them. This one is eliminated. But I moved the money to this position so that when that person retires, I'll have a person in place who is trained, hopefully, to take the place. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That sounds like good management.
But no, don't say I resurrected anybody. That, in my opinion, you can't do that legally.
Well,
You
you
get
created
sued.
another position. That's,
Wait,
Just move the money. Yeah, that's what we did. Move for another position that won't be hired until sometime next year. Other questions about?
anything? Okay. Next page. Let me get my pages back here. County attorney. I don't see anything on there. And I went back, we looked back at her budget request. Think she's all good. Anything on county attorney count? Seeing none, moving on, next page.
See, anybody, do the new ones know the history on county attorney? I'm causing this meeting to go longer. I need to hush. But as I think of them,
You're not recognized.
we used to have a county attorney that was a back tax collector, and served as the county attorney also. So they got paid by collecting back taxes. And that, anyway, now we have it where the trustee and I agree on an attorney. His portion of that appointment is for back taxes, and my portion is for the county attorney that you deal with. She's actually got two bosses, trustee and me. And the back taxes then that they bring in all are retained by the county. Used to, the attorney, who's now deceased, collected back taxes and they went to him or her. So now we retain all the back taxes and pay an attorney's fee. And gosh, I don't know what the back taxes are, but they're more than that budget. That was something, a really smart thing we started doing several years ago. It takes the trustee and the mayor working together to agree on somebody. If they didn't agree, then you'd have a mess. But it's really worked great. Started with Joe Bird, I believe, was the first full-time one like that. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
but it's a great thing that's not always been that way, because used to the back tax attorney they got their money off of back taxes.
All right, anything on county attorney? Seeing none, moving on to election commission. Just a little bit on there, the poll books are gonna be paid out of ARP, for the next election. And as the mayor said, the only two new positions are the ones that are coming from the opioid.
They're not new, they're just being moved. Opioid people aren't new.
Oh, I thought you said they were new.
No, I moved them from sheriff's department to there.
My bad, thank you.
There are no new full-time positions.
Okay, my bad. I stand corrected.
So I have a couple questions. And Mayor and I have talked about some of them.
Please.
The first one is in line item 191, and that's where it was $350 and it's now $200. And granted, it wasn't spent in the last budget. They didn't go to the meetings. They didn't have them because of COVID, and the meetings haven't been held yet this fall. So that's for the 5 election commission members and Fran and Rachel. So 5 times 50 is $350. So that line item will have to be adjusted either here or through a budget amendment. The other one is related to line 34.
Mr. Slater, listen, you're talking about 191 board and committee member fees?
I am.
Okay. And you're saying that 200 needs to be adjusted back to the 350?
I am.
All right, if you want to make your motion.
So I'd like to make a motion that we change that line from $200 to $350. And that's the 7 people I mentioned at $50 each for those dues.
Very good. So we have a motion on Fund 101, account 51, 500, line 191, to make that 350 even. Do I have a second? Do I have a second from Commissioner Winters? Any further discussion? I think you gave your explanation on that already. Kind of pre-motioned it. Anything? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Passes 5-0. Mayor and Lori, if you'll make that passes.
Okay.
So that'll be 350. Scratch out the 200. Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Continue.
The other one is line 348, postal. And they had requested 11, the mayor has it at 5. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, but up until last year sometime, your department paid for all the postage, is that correct, or most of the postage? Or how did that work?
Yeah, like they had 3,000 this year, so they paid for the first 3,000, and then I had to finish it out. We couldn't decipher how much of our postage we've gone over because of that, but we couldn't decipher how much of it was theirs. So it's a guess. I know they need an increase, but year before they only used 1,200 plus us. This year they used 3,000 plus us, and
So would the plan be, once they exhaust their 5,000, that your department would pick up the rest of the postage?
that's what in essence would have to happen,
Okay.
just like it did this year. The only thing in telling people that, then, is they'd go over, but it has made my line go over this year. That's one of the budget amendments we're still working on, is postage. We have no control over postage. That's every department, every elected official, including elections. But what I told them this year, because they knew they were going to go over, I said, we'll run it through ours. Ours will be over, but it's partially because of them, but not just because of them. And I don't know how much of it is them. So I pulled out a number that was somewhat less than hers. Remember, I told you I was looking at $50 and
Right.
$100 lines. So this is one of those, just like the one before.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
That's how it would literally work.
But they won't be expected if they once they spend the 5,000, to go pull money from their other line items to move into 348.
Well, if this was April and I was having that discussion with Rachel, I would say, is there somewhere you can move it from to increase your line? And if there wasn't, then I would do like this year, and we would have to do it.
Okay.
The only reason they're asked to pay their own is they have a postal line. Mike Smith probably doesn't, to use him for an example. Most people don't, but they've always had a postal line, and now we're asking them to pay the actual. But until we go through a full year of it, we don't know what that actual is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And keep in mind that with redistricting, everybody who had a new commissioner or who had a new state senator, or who had a new congressman, because Bradley County went total Congressman Fleischman. So everybody who used to be Desiree got it, gone higher, all those, everybody got a mail. So it was a little bit unique year with redistricting and the legal notification on that. So it happens every 10 years, so to speak. So that's probably why a lot of that was up a little bit. All right, anything else on elections? Like I said, and the other thing is they are going to, from what I understand, the last I've been told, but subject to better information or timely information, is they're going to get new machines, but the state is paying for those, but it's a reimbursement situation.
Yeah, we got the grant this week. I signed it this week, sent it back to the state for them to sign, but it's a huge grant.
600,000 is what I was told.
Yeah, something like that. Bottom line is we buy them, they reimburse us. At some point, there's got to be an amendment, but I don't have a signed contract yet to amend by, so we're right at the end of the year.
Okay.
That contract started a year ago. The state's just now getting around to getting the contracts to us to be signed. But yeah, there is a big contract, a grant coming. We're just waiting on the signed contract, and it will pay for those new election machines as well.
So the old election machines you can't sell them on the market, from what I understand. They're going to be obsolete because they don't meet the requirements any longer. Unless
probably go in our computer recycling.
Yeah. Mr. Winters, please.
What type of building improvement?
think they want new wallpaper.
I think it was flooring was one of them.
You know, my suggestion there, I don't have any, we've done a lot of that building because of the two insurance things, and I think they might feel left out because of that. We do the books this year, they're getting the new machines this year and all those things and lots of other increases. I don't have a problem with doing that floor, the rest of it, but we can do that next year. It's sort of, I think, and I can't speak for them, but that floor, for example, all got redone because of the flood. The flood didn't involve them, so that part didn't get redone. But maybe it ought to be redone at some point. Is probably.
Says that one. What was the 52.3 for other equipment?
I think that's what she
Computer
was
stuff?
budgeting for her poll books, which we're gonna use our money for.
So all right. Thank you. That's all.
Right, right.
Inquisitive.
And then he told you that those books are in the ARP.
Well, yeah, we'll see that here when we get to ARP.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else on election commission? Continue on. Next one is register of deeds. They are a fee office. That's why you don't see the 100 lines is typical. And the 3,000 there, one year we had a little, I wouldn't call it an issue because we're all friends and family, but it's in there. And we were looking at the her budget request, and in her budget request, she has, as you know, fee offices when they collect their fees, they can only, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, they can only keep quote unquote 3 months worth or 90 days or something like that. After that, they have to, I hate to use the word turn over, but then they journal entry it into the general fund. So that's why the trustee, the county clerk, and the register of deeds have their budget revenue projections. I was looking at register of deeds and just off of historical and stuff like that. I went to her just the other day and said, you know, things a little bit off. I mean, not questioning you or anything like that. She came back and she recalculated her numbers. So in our budget revenue side, her number was 185, and she increased it to 226. So if you want to make that a correction or make that edit in your there, and I have the document here. We just got it, but that's on me for just doing my homework and studying it. Everything else is within line, but we always try to budget as best we can, but it's better to be under and come in over than to be over and come in less. Otherwise, somebody else has to make up the difference. Commissioner Slater, I'm sorry.
So in line 205, retiree insurance, that increased $2,507. And when I go to the next page and look at their retiree insurance, it increased $201.
All right, hold on. Let me hold. Does everybody understand what I did with the revenue projection? I increased it, but it's based off of their projection. I didn't do it myself. Is that okay? Everybody gets that?
Yes.
And Lori, we just got Lori. Mayor, do you need this? If not, Lori can send it to you.
I made notes, so I don't guess I do.
Okay. Now, I'm sorry, Commissioner Slay, I want to finish up that thought. Now, you said
Line 205,
line 205 on account 51600.
correct. Their
Okay.
retiree insurance
Right.
increased $2,507.
Yes.
And when I flip the page to
When you go to building and planning inspection,
correct retiree insurance, theirs increased $201. So why is Register of Deeds $2,300 more for retiree insurance?
Well,
I don't know the answer to that, Mayor.
I don't either. I mean, it looks like that in planning it's for one person, and in Register of Deeds it's for two, but that doesn't split to give you that answer either. So there is a difference in the number for sure. So I don't know. You see what I'm saying? I know that there's more in Register of Deeds than there is the planning one.
So retire insurance. I'm trying to remember how retire insurance
Yeah,
works. I mean,
you adopted a policy many years ago that said when you retire, if you have, I'll give you an example, for if you have 30 years, let's say you retire at 62, then you guys are going to pay their insurance till they're till they're Medicare eligible. What she's usually does, and I assume has, is goes to the higher dates. But you may have an employee that is eligible for 30-year insurance, and we have to budget it. The state makes us, so we have to budget because that's a potential, what do you call it, liability. But you could have an employee that's eligible to retire October the 1st and got the rest of that year that we would have to budget for, and then you might have another employee that's not eligible to retire till February, so we only have to budget from February. So I tell you that's why it's hard to look at those retiree lines and make any sense out of them, because they're different retirement dates. And you could have an employee that is retiring at 30 that we have to budget for, say, a year, but you could have another employee that is eligible to retire at 25, is it, that we only pay 50%. You see what I'm saying? So partial years, and also there's two different plans. It can either be 100% insurance or it can be a 50% insurance. And then the good thing of it is they don't retire, that number doesn't get spent. Unless you all approve an amendment moving it, that money stays and goes in the fund balance next year. But we do have to show the state that we have budgeted that potential liability.
But Mayor, is that title, that line accurate? Is it actually an insurance policy, or is it just money that we're?
No, we continue to provide their insurance for them. Same
No,
insurance.
I mean, it's not like an insurance, like health insurance. We're not paying a premium or anything. It's just.
Yeah.
Who's the?
If they retire, if you retire and you got 30 years, we're going to pay your same insurance to your Medicare. It's a wonderful benefit.
Right, but it's not an insurance company. We're paying.
I think they stay on our insurance till Medicare. I believe it's the way you're asking the details
so
of how.
we continue paying the premium.
I'm pretty sure
as
that's
if they came to work every day. It's just they're retired because of the policy.
Right.
I get it. Okay. Commissioner, I'm sorry, Commissioner Slater? Chairman Cry?
Maybe I'm overlooking something again, but let's go. So I see on line 3, medical insurance 207, but I don't see anything for employee salaries on the Register of Deeds like I do on other elected officials.
Now, Register of Deeds, trustee, county clerk,
Those three.
just the three. We do not pay salaries. Now, they're a fee office where they pay their own salaries. We do, by agreement, do their salaries. It runs through our system now, but the only thing we have to budget for those departments is those things that you see here, the benefits and those kinds of things.
So
we don't budget their salaries. They have to pay for them out of fees.
Yeah, but we go on over to property assessor's office and we show his salary.
He's not, I didn't name him. It's the
Yeah,
Register of Deeds, the trustee, the county clerk.
All right.
It also could be your circuit court clerk, but the commission many years ago brought them into the budget system, so they're not, it's just those three. And again, we do their payroll for them now, and they reimburse us with their fees, but by law, those departments have to pay their own fees, their own salaries.
Thank you.
But they enter into a letter of agreement with you.
We do a letter of agreement, and in that letter of agreement, we agree to do their payroll and to be reimbursed, yeah.
Oh, and Circuit, Holly. I knew there was another one.
Does Holly work that way too? Okay.
So, Chairman Cry, Holly, say Holly, not to be too personal. Clerk and Master is also a fee office, so you won't see any of her salary lines, just the benefit sections on there. And she also has to return excess fees after 90 days as well. I knew there was 4. All right. Register of Deeds, Commissioner Slater's good. Anybody on Register of Deeds? If not, moving forward. We're making good time. Not. Planning and building inspection. Mayor, you've had some, I wouldn't call it turnover there, but everything looks in order is with respects that you've adjusted the salaries, I believe, but everything else looks like you got 4. I'm going by what you have for medical insurance. 4 is the number of employees in that account. Good?
4 is right. We've not changed the number of employees. We've got a vacancy right now, but still 4 people, yes.
Okay.
2, that's the planner, 2 building inspectors, and the receptionist.
Any questions on planning and building inspectors? Seeing none, moving on to GIS. Anything on GIS? Nothing on GIS. Moving on to county buildings. And you see the footnotes there, some paid in archives. And he's got 3 lines there. I'm sorry, 2 lines, the asterisk there, which is utilities and, that's not good, supplies.
Utilities
Yeah,
and
we just
building
talked
maintenance.
about that.
And we moved some of that there so that it can be paid for with the reserve money, is what it amounts to.
Yep. Anything else? Nothing? Moving on to other facilities, vocational training, building, SPCA, that's just maintenance money there. Over there on Johnson Boulevard, all right? Accounting and budgeting, we just chatted about that because it's money coming over from personnel. And this is Renee and that your second floor. Anything on there? Anybody have any questions on Commissioner Alford?
It actually went from 64 to 70 during this budget year by using money out of 301, and then in the new budget, it's acknowledged that 301 went to 4 and the 70. So there wasn't a percentage increase for July. Yeah, it was moved. It was the accounting services was moved to there and then lowered for next year.
What?
And then the second line was the additional money that came over.
All right, now I'm confused. I thought I had it now. Account 52100 105 was at 64,709. Now it's at 7709. What you're saying is that part of that $6,000 increase is in the budget we're currently in right now. So you're reflecting this number in the new budget.
Right, it's actually happening now, but it reflects in the new budget. It's actually coming out of 301 accounting services.
So if the current budget, we've already amended that?
We didn't need to amend it. That was an okay line to do it with. And then we fixed it in the new budget. There's no percentage. Anybody that I know of like that got a salary increase, there's several people, probably 15 people that didn't get percentages, didn't get any percentage because they had already adjusted their salaries within their budget. And anybody that can do that, that's okay, but we don't add a percentage on top of it then, and there's no percentage on that one.
No percentage, but
already
a
got it.
monetary increase.
Do what?
You'd already got
There
it.
was an increase, if you already got a raise that you could pay for within your budget, I see them do that all the time, then we don't do a percentage on top of it.
Right, yeah, because that'd be double dipping, but.
Well, they would argue but if we know it, we don't do it, I can tell you that. And this one didn't get a 3%.
I must be tired.
See, if it had got a 3%, my 70 would be a higher figure. But mine stayed the same because that's already the salary based on moving that up, that 6,000 up there.
Okay.
So you say,
No, please.
you say we didn't have to do any kind of budget amendment to jump that up to 70 anytime during the year?
No. It's just paid out of 2 lines right now. two appropriate lines.
That's-
301 is an okay line to pay for them.
301.
Yeah, 301.
And the 108 is the reflection of the money that came over from personnel. And the next
Right.
line, 162.
108 is the money moved over. And what'd you say last?
Just the line clerical personnel,
Yeah.
162. Right, it went from 78,565 to 108,459. That must be missing.
I heard what you said, but what's the question?
I guess the question, I'll muck it up, is that is the 78,565 plus the 26,735 is the 108,459. Oh, I can get my calculator out. Okay, thank you. All right, so that, I get it now, sorry. Slow.
All I can really say is no new money. It was moved from that other place over, but the amount that was moved was salary and benefits. And then there is one person in that line, or I think, that got the 3% also. So that line didn't just go up that amount. There was other people in that line.
So, we don't.
But at the end of the day, I should have 26,000 for salary and benefits for somebody come January or February.
Any other questions on accounting and budgeting? Mr. Alford, please.
Still on 301, it went from 10 to 4. Is that where that moved from?
Yes.
So we don't think we're going to need any more in accounting services than the 4?
We're trying to do away with it gradually, so no, we
What is accounting services?
it's when we
Excuse my
needed
ignorance, but
outside things to do with it. Used to, that was where we paid, it would be $50,000 or $60,000 for Arnett, Kersey, Kimsey Lay. And when we started doing it in-house, we've dwindled it. And so we're dwindling it down. I don't know that we'll even need that, but does that make sense? Yeah, we've almost done away with it, yes. And we put it in salaries, some of it too, but yeah, we used to spend $50,000-$60,000 on paying them to do the budget for us. Now we do it all in-house, but we didn't want to do away with it totally because from time to time we do need some help with something. So we've gradually got it down to almost nothing.
so that was all done in-house, not through us, amendments or anything through us.
No,
Okay.
no, the 6 going up to the top line, no, there wasn't an amendment.
How did it change though without an amendment?
Do what?
How did it change without an amendment?
There are probably 100 people in Bradley County government that get paid from 2 lines. Is that what you're questioning?
No, I
You
didn't
can
even-
pay from 2 lines, so for the last few months, there's been 2 lines paying that one.
Okay.
There wasn't any need to do an amendment, but it is being fixed now.
All right. Anything else on accounting and budgeting? Seeing none, moving on to property assessor. Looks in order. I think you already disclosed that there were gonna be some tiny cuts here and there.
There was very little in this one. Basically, I left everything
this
just
is
like it was, except they are one of 2 or 3 departments that asked for a larger percentage, and we couldn't do that, so everybody's at 3%. So I had to go back to 0 and then add 3%. But everybody got 3%. Some
Right.
just didn't get
And
the
this
9 or
is an
10.
off year for a reappraisal, so, yeah.
Well, that's a different, but yeah.
Yeah, this is the next one over here. The next one on page 22 is reappraisal program. He got 68. Pretty much gave him everything he wanted on that one.
Yeah, I
Moving
didn't
on,
change anything.
the county's trustee's office. That server, you see that note there, it's gonna be paid with art money. Wait, is that what it says? Data processing, that's what I was, you have it in, you have the server, as if that's what I'm referring to, in data processing, 709, data processing. You zeroed it out in your proposal, and you got the asterisk saying it's in art fund, but you also funded it in 189.
Well, I didn't. It's in 189.
So
I kept switching them back and forth. I don't have it both places, do I? I think this footnote's just
well,
wrong.
I'm for putting it out, paying for everything out of art money.
And maybe I
You
had
knew what I
a
was gonna say, huh?
had a
All right.
premonition there of what you might do. I started out with everything in 189. I moved a lot of them to ARP, and so that footnote is wrong as of now. If you change it, it's right. So I'll wait to see if you change it before.
Remind me, hey, Lori, to.
But that's why it's not in his budget. It is either in 89, 189, or ARP.
Yeah, before we finish up with the general fund, I'll make that motion, so I don't have to. All right, anything else in there? And he is a fee office, like we just talked about. Anything on there, trustee's office? We wanna make sure we get his totally right. Thank you. I'm not cutting you.
There is, I'll point out, because I'll be coming back to you in the very near future, possibly next week. The lease is up. There is a lease contract I have to bring
that's
to
right.
you. There is an increase in the lease, and that's why under rent, it's going from 42 to 45.
Right. And the lease is gonna go for multiple years, hopefully
Gosh.
past 26.
I don't remember how many. I'll be bringing it before long, but I don't remember how many years is in it.
Any other questions on the trustees? Seeing none, county clerk, page 24, also a fee office, that's why you don't, but she does have 106 on there for some reason. Do we have to amend some money in there? Is that why?
She comes to you with all those reserve accounts she has
Oh, yeah.
throughout the
In
year
September, yeah.
and puts money in there for different things.
The number of employees matches that, and yep. Any questions on the county? Nothing. All right, moving on to data processing. Why do I have a question mark here? Oh, 103 assistant has a whole whopping $2,885. Who's
All right. On this one, Adam's pay is three parts. He has part in as a county mayor assistant. He has a part as the OSHA, one of three people, and he has part in data processing. None of that's new, except in the data processing, it never had been split out at budget time. You can see in that far left, but we're showing it accurately now. A very small percentage is in data processing. When you get to OSHA, there's a percentage there. He is over IT, and he's also works with EMA a lot. So his salary actually comes from three different places, and that's the amount that is in this one.
so Adam's life insurance worth $2?
Well, what the computer does there, when you're paid from three different places, it splits it, yeah. And
All
so,
right, so you basically prorated his total amount and percentage wise from the three accounts. Got it.
yeah. But now, keep in mind while you say that, Cindy, Ms. Slater, if you were doing the math on it, you may be looking at a life insurance line that doesn't divide up right, and there's a good example of why it might not, because there's $2 in this one. And I don't remember what's in OSHA, but the computer puts some in this one, the computer puts some in OSHA, and then there's some in, so it's in three places, not necessarily supposed to be split according to salary, but.
Okay, so Adam, I know I should have asked you this in a budget hearing, so this is not really that, but the contract with, help me with the rank,
Right,
right core, sorry. Where are we at on that in general? Or you can be as specific as you want.
We are preparing to announce that for a bid. The contract is up, so we're having to bid that out.
And that's
We've got the
anticipated
RFP
in
draft.
here?
Right now it's not. No, well, the increase is yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
And the other thing, the website is already paid for in current budget, or?
Correct.
All right. Any questions on data processing? Seeing none, moving on to the next budget item, which is Kirk. I can speak, that'd be great. Circuit Court Clerk. 33 employees, matches there with medical.
I didn't change anything except add salaries and benefits.
Okay. And the one note I had was the new, this happened last year that we had to put something there with the, when there's no, I want to call it an award, but when the verdict comes down, the victims get first and she's low in a total.
Yeah, her fees are going
But that
down
was
because
built
of
in
that.
already. Anything else on Circuit Court Clerk? Say none. Moving on. General Sessions, Judge Collins. Did he? Looks like you gave him
That
pretty much everything he wanted, so.
finagled a little bit with it down toward the bottom. The only main thing that was done there is his retirement. He had it under the state, and since they're new employees, they're actually in the hybrid line, so it was moved. You follow me?
Yeah.
Instead of 204, it's 299.
This is what we were talking about the other day. $250. I'm looking at dues and memberships line 320, 250. He requested 1,000, and you went with 500. So it's an increase from one year to another, but it's a cut from what?
Doubled it, but he'll call it a cut. You're right.
That was my another attempted joke. Dang it. Moving on. Drug court. This is a grant, so there's really not. We'll recognize the revenue and adjust the expenses accordingly. Chancery Court. Not much to that one as well. But unless anybody has anything on page 29. Moving on to page 30. Juvenile Services. And you see that we're going to be using ARP money to help them with their budget a little bit, and there were some cuts in there, but you did. Yeah.
They're minor. The main thing here is this is one of the departments that asked for a higher increase, so I zeroed it out and then put 3% like everybody else.
Right. Any questions on page 30, Juvenile Services? Looking both ways, seeing none. General Sessions, Judge Morgan. You see the increase in his salary, and there's a tiny decrease in medical, but that's good. 920, a little decrease. Well, that's actually travel.
His retirement got moved for the same reason too.
Very good. Any questions on that count? Seeing none, turning the page. Tennessee Veterans Court. That's a grant as well, so the revenue and expenses will offset. Next page is Polk County probation contract. We just voted that contract in a couple months ago, so that should be all set for
It
the
is.
contract. So moving on to page 34. Jury witnesses. That's Gala's, right?
Right.
Yeah, so there's not much to that. Next page, mental health drug court grant. Not much you can do with grants. Next page is also a grant. Page 36. Moving to page 37, probation services. Yeah, there's not much to that.
So I have a question.
Yes, please. I'm sorry, Commissioner Slater.
In line 105, is this another case where they received their pay increase early?
It is a case, I can't tell you about the individual ones, but probation, community corrections, and the contract, they did jumble salaries during the year with existing money and then got no percent. You're right. And the lines ultimately went down in that particular one, but they may have gone up in one of the others. But they were adjusted during the year, and they definitely got no 3%, right?
Thank you.
Mr. Alford, please. I don't want you to.
I just a question is, in the future, is there any way we might know when these salary increases go up during the year that we're not aware of? No amendments are made or anything?
Yeah, you'd get hundreds of them though from Steve Lawson.
From who?
You don't set
Oh.
salaries, you set budgets.
Okay.
Steve Lawson jumbles salaries around all the time, and so do other departments. So if you wanted somehow for HR, the one employee in HR to notify you every time they send it over, but there'll be hundreds of them.
Hmm.
You don't set salaries, you set budgets. Once you set that sheriff's budget, it's his budget. Once you set anybody else's budget, it's their budget. Now, we want them to amend things to pay for them properly, and especially not to have audit findings, but it's not a salary issue once that budget's approved.
I just was never aware of so many that you're talking about.
Well, you're calling it so many because you're looking at my budgets, but you don't see them in the sheriff's budget. And that
Well, you
$6
said
million line,
You said
you don't.
hundreds of them, that's why I was.
Right, I'd say in millions, he's got millions of dollars in that line. I'd say there's multiple salary changes throughout the year, multiple.
Okay.
And how that works is they send over a payroll thing. Let's say it's Lori, and instead of paying her $200 as payroll, pay her $210. As long as they have money in that line, we don't question it, and he has the authority to do that. That's all I'm saying. I understand what you're saying, but they happen a lot. And so my departments, if it's not really a policy, but I've told them lots of times, if you can jumble and use money differently, without needing more money, and especially in this case, and then you submit a budget next year that's less, it's sort of like the sheriff's freezing positions. He's already frozen 15 positions, and that's how this budget works. But he didn't amend that line down when he froze those positions, if that makes sense. The bottom line is there's salary adjustments as long as it's within their budget. I know we've gotten upset in previous years about bonuses. Well, why did so-and-so give bonuses? It's their budget at that point. If they saved money and had money in a proper line for bonuses, they do them. We can't stop them. So yeah, they do. When you look at all those different varies, they happen.
Hopefully, you don't have to go to the fund balance to pay for that bonus.
Right, as long as they don't have to do that. Now, we'd rather them not do it possibly because that'll help our fund balance. But, if Sheriff's watching, I'm not picking on him, but he's a good example. If he's got $6 million in that salary line, he can't go buy a car with it because that would take a budget amendment, but he can do a bonus with it. If he's got vacancies and there's extra money there, he can do raises as long as he don't overspend that line once that budget's approved. Now, next year, if he came in and he asked for more money in that line because of those raises, that'd be an issue. But he might ask for fewer people and yet stay in that same category. So when you see the amendments, it's because he's moving salary money to buy a car, to buy an air conditioner, you know what I'm saying, things like that, which you got to do. You can't make those purchases out of those salary lines. But again, there's lots of salary adjustments throughout the year, throughout.
Yeah. Mr. Harper, we're going to probably chat a lot about the sheriff's plan here coming up in a second, but as long as you didn't go over, I'm on the line. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Nice.
Mr. Winters.
Ask about medical insurance. Went up from 40,700 to 59,000.
What are we on, probation?
Probation services. Sorry,
Probation,
207.
207.
The request was 40,000.
Well, what we will try to do, no matter what they request, is budget it right. Now, he could have somebody that, say he hired a veteran that's on VA and doesn't need insurance, and we might not know that. Our attempt is to budget insurance for everybody that's going to need it. Just like in your case, we check to see how many is taking it. We don't just, but you could have he may have a new employee that doesn't need it and we didn't know it, so that line may be over more than it needs to be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Last year it was, current year it's 48, so 48 to 52. That tells me he may have changed employees that doesn't need it.
Yeah.
Anything else on probation services? Moving on to page 38, courtroom security. That's a nice number right there. Okay. And Commissioner Offord, we are at sheriff's budget. I got a few on here, but the big thing, I guess, in this budget, Mayor, is the step plan. You're proposing it.
Yeah.
And- go ahead. I'm sorry.
But I moved, as you know, we already talked about it. I moved 2 people to opioid budget, and it says down there 2 positions in opioid fund along with benefits. If I hadn't have done that, though, on salaries, mine is exactly like the request. We got to the point with his step plan that they were happy with, and that I committed to try to make that work, and I did. I didn't change it at all. So the step plan is exactly like he wanted, except for those things in that box at the bottom. I did move the 2 positions, which he actually suggested. So they're still his employees, but they're in the opioid budget. And other than that, the step plan is intact. It's too complicated for me to explain anyway, but he explained it at budget hearings. So.
Well,
And then those benefit lines were adjusted down a little bit because of the 2 employees that went to opioid. And also,
So
while I
the-
think of it, this one doesn't have the 3%. This one has adjusted salaries, just like some others we've talked about previously, and then there's no percent on top of them.
right, but since he's going to a step plan, I always think of how it was Army. Basically, a matrix. You take your rank, and then your years of services, and if you 5 years and you were E6, you had X amount. That was what. So he can't change those numbers. In other words, I'm a captain over there, and I got 5 years, and that means I make $100 just to keep the numbers easy. He can't change that 100 because that's in the step plan. If he wanted to give me more money, he'd have to bonus it.
When elections come and go, I don't know how that works. I can tell you that, because as we all know, there's a lot of adjustments. And those are in the middle of a budget year, by the way. That tells you how much control an elected official has over his salaries.
And you understand my question, right? I mean, you can't change the step plan, the matrix, or the spreadsheet of.
But if you, and you can't, I think, but how does it work? You're a captain and you just, because an election, got demoted to a patrolman. Did you go down in that step plan?
Yeah, well,
You still got all those years that got, I don't know how that
the
works.
years you don't lose. Maybe we need to clarify that.
Well, I mean, they know how it works. I just don't.
I mean, it's. I'm good with the step plan and everything, but Lori, maybe we can clarify that in a future meeting. Is how does it work when employees move from one rank to the other? Obviously, their years never go backwards but if you're going from an E8 to an E4, use some military terms, but then you're making an E4 pay. That's the whole concept of being demoted.
Yeah.
If that's it. So we'll get back to that, but the step plan itself and the number of employees per cell in that step plan, that's for the most part set in stone, right? I'm asking.
You're asking the wrong person.
Oh.
I can't defend or explain it. It's complicated.
So
It's supposed to
basically,
be a really good thing.
What
And
you're saying is the 4,508,109 satisfies the plan.
yes, it does. The only
For-
difference in the 4508 and the budget request is the amount moved to opioid. That's the only thing I changed. It's to the penny, his plan, and part of his plan moved to opioid.
All right, we'll have more conversations with the sheriff.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, please, Commissioner Winters.
School
Yeah,
resource
go
officers, the 850,000. is down
That's
to
footnoted
zero,
at the bottom
and
also.
there's a grant coming.
The
from
grant,
the state.
and
It's not a grant,
the
is it?
state,
It's the state.
we learned this week, it should be coming first part of July. That will be, and it is a grant, but it'll be treated like a grant. It'll be a bigger number that'll be we're not sure if it'll be amended there or if it'll be set up as a new budget. Since it's a huge grant that'll be going on, we may do like the opioid and set up as a grant by itself, But if not, it'll be a grant. Line will be amended.
Here, you got the floor.
Will this include more SROs than what we've had before?
Supposed to, yes.
Great.
It will fund one per location. There's still discussions. Is the pie considered a location? Is it considered two locations? They have, I think, already said virtual schools is not a location. But it will fund X dollars for each location. And the application, or whatever you want to call it, is supposed to be coming like next week. And then they have to do an agreement with each school and with the school as a whole. So, and they're on top of that. They'll be ready to go, and then the money should be available 1st of July. So we'll probably, one of our first amendments will be that.
But and the grant, I guess, means many things to many people, but it's not a grant that's going away.
It's
not-
not,
it's
it's the state will tell you it's ongoing.
Changes the law, but
Yeah.
when I read it or saw it up in Gatlinburg, it's always going to happen. So I didn't think of it as a grant like that other grant they're getting for their drones or whatever. That's going away after a certain amount of time. But
Yeah.
this one's not ever. As
This
of right
one,
now, it's never going away.
no, that's right.
All right, Adam, help me with this. In here, in her, I say hers, line 399. Do you have the budget?
Yes.
In her budget request, and I should have asked her the other day. She is saying that we are in need of fiber internet here at the Justice Center, and there's a very big increase. Aren't you handling all of the fiber from building to building? Or?
No, so the fiber in the communications line for data processing is just for these two buildings, the courthouse and the annex. They have their own fiber contract with the sheriff's office.
You are handling fiber, just not for them.
Correct.
All right. So is that a one-time cost?
No, it essentially doubles the cost of the internet. So that's why it's gone up.
So no, it's not a one-time cost.
No.
So she's going to need that amount. Because where I'm going with this, I know I'm not to ask the same question 30,000 times, but if this is not the installation of fiber, then
No, I mean, whatever cost is there might be some initial installation cost, but for instance, here, we were paying $600 a month, and when we went to gig speed fiber, it doubled.
all right. So that's a recurring cost.
That's a recurring cost monthly.
To have the engineer come out here and actually implement the fiber and crawl
Yes.
through the axe, whatever.
Yes.
That
I don't know what that initial cost would be, because I've not been a part of their
okay.
negotiations, but
All right.
I would assume they're.
I was just
included
trying
in
to,
there.
if this was a one-time cost, move it to another, your famous, part. But if it's a recurring cost, then she's gonna have to budget for it. Commissioner Alford, please.
It's sort of like those other things. Possibly, the problem is they make lots of small purchases throughout the year, and with ARP, I'm wanting them to mainly go through us. I don't want to have any control over those purchases or anything, but with ARP, I almost have to have some. That's the only reason I wouldn't move it. With the those other three things, that would be a lot simpler because that's one purchase for each department. But this isn't one purchase; it's multiple. Yeah, I mean, not necessarily little, but it could be guns, it could be whatever. And I don't want to have to report to Biden about purchase of guns when he don't even like guns. Does that make sense? That's a good example, though, of what I'm saying. So yeah, it could be, to answer your question, Louis, but I hope you don't, because it's just complicated. Now the cars are over there.
All right. So the step plan is implemented for the sheriff by passing this budget.
Right.
Okay. Travis, next, any questions, Commissioner
Oh,
Slater, Commissioner Mason?
I wanted to point out one other thing for you, that principal on lease thing. Our lease cars, the principal, that lease payment goes away after this budget year. And then in ARP, we're buying cars instead of leasing them from here on. So for the last 4 years, is that right?
Yeah.
We've been leasing them and the lease has gone away. That's why it went from 311 to 156.
We're-
So the lease is over. That'll give us 12, 13, 14 cars to sell. Not necessarily those cars, but the older ones. And they will sell them, and the 50,000, it used to always be 100, it's 50 now. As they sell them, they will use the sell money to buy more cars up until the 50,000 is used up, and then it goes to your general fund for your fund balance. That's sort of the agreement that we've worked out on that. So that should put some additional money in your fund balance, but it definitely cuts your lease payment. No more leased cars, thank goodness.
It wasn't a bad thing, but I get
It was financing at high interest rate. I can finance it a lot cheaper myself.
All right.
But anyway,
But we're gonna purchase them, the option $1 thing or whatever after it's all said and done.
and they'll be, I told him as soon as the budget's approved, he can go ahead because it is not a quick turnaround on cars, as you know, right now. So he'll probably be doing it fairly soon. We normally tell him to wait till December, but those lease isn't up till December, so he can't sell cars until then, but he'll probably start
And that's,
purchasing.
is that gonna be the case with all the things that you're putting in ARP? Once the budget's approved, they can go purchase, like,
Art money is available, so yeah, it could
Yeah.
be. The only reason I wanted to hold off on that one is because he's replacing lease cars and the lease doesn't end
or
until
we
later
can
in
change
the
your
year.
budget.
So, but I'd say if he ordered them now, it's probably 3 or 4 months out anyway. Not as bad as ambulances and fire trucks,
Right.
but it is.
Yeah, well, we asked him the other day out of finance to start doing the research, the back office bidding on the fence, which
Right.
is ARP money, but the time it,
Right. Whenever you get those bids, if you approve doing it, then we will amend ARP to put that there, because that's a
Alright.
one-time big purchase.
anything over here? I just wanna make sure. All right, moving on. That's the sheriff's, the budget. He's obviously got 2 more accounts, but we'll get to those. Next one is traffic safety patrol. That's been zeroed out. So I guess this is the last year we will see it then. Right?
No, traffic patrol, is that the one you're talking about?
Traffic safety patrol for,
That's
this
sort
is
of,
zeroed out in this year, and the actual, doesn't it cascade out?
no,
Unless
no,
you
this
have-
one, from memory, is a grant that we amend in when we get it. It's
Oh.
always zero right now.
I gotta make a note of that. This is an amended grant. Oh,
It starts out zero, but
Yeah.
we'll amend it at some point.
we missed that. Or I missed that. Traffic signals, 29,000, and utilities for them. Those are our county roads right there. Right? All right. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all those, we're not. Page 42 is also a grant. And I guess that's the same concept. Once it comes in, you'll amend it up.
I think that one's actually over, COSA, I believe.
I forget what that one is, to be honest with you.
Me too.
All right. Administration of Sexual Offenders Registry, that's a grant as well? Or is that revenue coming in?
I think that's a reserve account that
Yeah, that's a reserve
accumulates.
account. Next one is Justice Center. This is, your footnotes includes step with 15 frozen, but he also has 15 open.
Right.
Right.
30 positions, we froze. A lot of people that have salary problems, they ought to address it this way. Some won't agree to. They say, no, I gotta have all these positions. Well, if you can't fill them, what good does it have to have positions? So he agreed, 30 positions, I'm not gonna fill them anytime soon.
Well,
So
the
he's
whole-
freezing, and by freezing them, that frees up that money for salaries and steps and so forth.
So with such an attractive and lucrative step plan, now people will be signing up to apply, right?
We'll see. I would say it'll take a while to get those 15 filled.
That was my attempt.
And we
at
did that
joke.
in another department when we get to it too.
See you later. All right, there is another one here. Yeah,
Now, seeing this one, you can see where I didn't change those salaries at all. The other one, you couldn't see it because I'd moved some to opioid, but this one, it's identical. the request.
All right, anything else on the Justice Center? Seeing none. Workhouse, same concept. Everybody in these three accounts is now on the step plan, right? Right.
The only other biggie in the workhouse is I do not have the debt payment coming out of workhouse
Oh,
anymore.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. So we moved, I say we, you proposed it, we chatted about it. The workhouse, this is for those of us, when we originally did the workhouse, it was as much as possible, the revenue that came from the workhouse was to help pay for the loan, the interfund loan that we were talking about earlier. But to help them with their budget, and Mayor's gonna probably get mad at me for saying it, with such a healthy fund balance, in the 151, we moved it over there. It's not much, about 2,000.
Yeah, well,
And if in February, when we look at these, we may put more into it. What we talked about earlier today, about 5 hours ago, right? Right. Workhouse. Anything else on workhouse? Commissioner Slater.
I just have a comment
Please.
related to line 422, food supplies.
Food 422. Yep, the new contract. Yep.
I know at least last month and maybe the month before, he's moved $75,000 to food because of the food cost.
the food contract definitely went up. Of course, a lot has to do with the number of people there. That line has got to be increased. I'm hoping that it don't have to be, the contract didn't double, but it did go up a lot. So that's one of those kind of lines, based on population and so forth. And this one works in, really, the only reason this budget's separate is we wanted it to pay for itself, but at some point, we ought to incorporate it into the jail and just have one budget. Because let's say this one is over, but the jail has sufficient money, Cindy knows this, one's, it's gonna get paid. They work together, we ought to just combine them at some point in the future, but
Well,
it was created like, not now, please. If you want to next year, tell me. It was created this way.
I know what I wanted the account.
Yeah, you
So-
wanted it well, you
so
all
that, so that
wanted
we
it
could
where
see
you
whether or
could,
not the workhouse would ever pay
Right.
for itself.
and of course, I told you from the beginning it wouldn't pay for itself, but
I don't
that's
know.
okay. We've tracked it for a while, and it's, but yeah, next year, please, next year. The
All
key
right.
word being next. You remind me we ought to really do that.
All right.
Now that makes that other one so big and bundlesome, but still, it's all one building, it's all one facility. Why they have two food, it's all one food contract,
Well,
for
there's
example.
a different administration at the time as well. Now, anyway.
Yep.
So, Commissioner Slater, does that answer your?
Food could be, but unlike some people, they're pretty good about adjusting when they have a line. They're pretty good about that. I'll give them credit.
And if I may, Commissioner Slater, when we get the budget amendments for services rendered for non-government, there's the extra money that she sometimes put in other lines. Maybe we can encourage her to put it in food.
Later in
makes-
the
you know what I'm
year and they
saying?
needed it there, they probably would do that. They may have done it. I don't know. I don't follow it that close. But that's what I mean. They watch those lines fairly good.
Oh, we do too.
And then they move it around, they amend it, but they also could do things like that with that extra work.
All right. Anything else on workhouse? See now, moving over to page 46, juvenile detention
Oh,
center.
let me mention one other thing while I think of it. This one and Justice Center. Cassandra and I have budgeted an increase for the medical services contract. That's just a guess. That has not been bid yet. So that's sort of like food. It's just a guess. But we have plugged in both here and the Justice Center a percentage of increase. But
Yeah.
until we bid it, we won't know exactly what that one is. That may take an amendment later on, or it could be more than enough. I don't
That's
know.
an increase to help make sure that there's no.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All right. Anything on juvenile detention center account 54230? Looking both ways, seeing that, Mayor.
I will point out here, they were good enough to work with me and do similar to the sheriff's department. They froze positions. I think from memory, they had 5. Yes, they would argue they need 5 or they wouldn't have them, but they have 5 vacancies. They agreed to freeze one and put it toward their salaries. They need salary help more than anybody possibly, and that did help. I wanted to do 2, but I was happy to get the 1. So they froze one of the 5 and put it toward salary. So that has helped them a lot. Didn't really change anything major in that one, a lot of little minor things, but
Nothing that I think they'll
bigger than
do.
this year.
Next page, 47 is a grant. The bug, I always called it. Moving on.
The vehicle was in that last one too, that you keep talking about, and that vehicle was zeroed out and 32 put in the ARP.
I appreciate you doing that. And yeah, they'll be able to get their vehicle here pretty soon. Southeast Tennessee Community Corrections, not much to that.
And it's a grant.
You got 4 employees, looks like. Yeah.
That you have revenue that matches that amount, it's a grant.
Moving on to the next one, violent crime intervention. I have a note here. What is this? I forgot.
This is, you remember when that,
$100,000.
I don't remember his name or title, but somebody came from the sheriff's department and explained this grant we were getting. It was gonna be over a 2-year period. Pike, yeah, Mr. Pike.
Moving
Well,
on.
most of it's in this next year's budget.
MEA, sound like a rapper. EMA. What did I have a question mark for? This is what happens.
EMA is another one that
Are
asks.
they moving to the Raider building?
Well, we're still hopeful. They are talking positively about it. So hopefully down the road, 911 center has a space issue, not only salaries but a space. In addition to the amount that gets pays toward their operation costs, we also have space issues. And if that works out, then that will free up a lot of space for the 911 center itself to take over. So we're hoping to get a part of a floor in the bank building.
I've heard that. So do we pay rent to 911 center?
There's some lines in their budget now that we hope that we would be able to convert and use for rent. What we've said to them, and we've not negotiated an amount, we're having to work with schools, city schools.
Yeah.
We've said any money that we have that goes toward that kind of thing is all we would be able to pay over here, and so we haven't got to that point, but it's looking positive anyway.
All right. Homeland Security.
Whoa.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Slater. I apologize, please.
So if EMA moves to the building on Raider Drive, are we responsible for the renovation of their space?
Yeah, there will be a build-out thing, and I don't know how that's going to work out. There's also federal grant for build-outs that I don't know if we're going to fit in that timeline now or not. Originally, that's what we were looking at, but it's taken a while for this process to go through. But there will be a build-out at that point that'll have to be involved in not only the contract, but yes, okay. We hope to have the money one way or another for that, and I don't know what that cost will be. The building, no matter what people say, is in pretty good shape. But again, there's a build-out. But it would be less expensive for the city and county if this works out. What 911 Center is looking at or has looked at is millions of dollars to build a new building, a new, bigger building. By doing this, whatever the cost of that build-out is, and by the way, that's 70-30 or 80-20, city-county, so it's somewhat shared. It would be less costly than building a whole new building for the 911 facility. And it would give 911 their additional space they need.
Commissioner Mason, we hear from you today.
Well, here I am.
Yes, sir.
Mayor he answered a little bit of that about I think the Raider Drive, I think that would give more training, more room for training. You answered that, but what about an extra man for Troy and them? I know they've asked in future.
3 people, like I told you the other night. Ambulance asked for an extra person, EMA asked for an extra person, and elections. And at the end of the day, there was, in my opinion, without dipping further in the fund balance that we can't do, I chose the higher percentage over the 3 positions. I know they're all justified, and they're all 3 probably upset, but I hope the other 650 employees appreciate 3% versus 1 or 2 if we'd have done it. I think the salary increase was more important, and that's not to say that all 3 of them is not justified. I'm sure they are, one way or another, but that was the 3 requested ones, and I couldn't do one and not do the other. They're all justified. So they're not there, and instead we got the percentage as high as possible. It should be higher than that, but we got it as high as possible, I think.
Well, I do like the 3% raise for the all county employees. So
Yeah, I really, and everybody said the raise was the number one priority, so I treated that as number two, and from there on, but that's the scenario anyway.
But I do like the idea about the Raider Drive. That
Hopefully it
definitely-
works out. There will be a build-out cost that we'll have to deal with and before we make any agreements, but, it would fix, I know I'm repeating myself, but it would fix a 911 problem, an EMA
Yes.
problem, a city and county problem, because all that's joint. And I don't want to go in debt for a multi-million-dollar new building, which is, they've
Yeah.
already done a lot of work on that. But if this works out, I think it would be the less expensive way to go for both city and county.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Good. All right. On that same note, Mayor, the headcount increase, obviously the ratio study is probably the biggest hindrance on going there. But that may, I mean, we're not even finished with this budget, but the 24-25 budget, that may be we'll have to let you know if that's a priority to finally go ahead and get some headcount. Last question, you can just say yes or no. EMA has received all their FEMA and TEMA money from all the disaster monies, correct?
Yeah, a lot of it comes in June, so I can't say if the word all is actually correct, but yeah. And actually, those grants, we'll call them, from FEMA and TEMA in different places, are a little bit more next year. Not much, but a little bit more.
Thank you. Anything else on that? Nothing. Homeland Security?
That's one of them right there.
Yep. Inspections and regulation, anything on that?
Inspection regulation is the OSHA one I was talking about. And that's 3 people. What's the term? Well, they do ADA. They're one of them's job is go around, does the ADA, TOSHA inspections. If there's a wreck, if an ambulance, fire truck, cop car has a wreck, they do the reporting on it. Cost control for things like that is part of their responsibility. So they will do the wreck report. They being, you think of it as Troy doing it, but it's one of his people. 2 of his people, along with Adam, are paid out of this budget also. That's that third budget.
What do you
And
say?
the only reason there's an increase here is because of the liability insurance. And I tell you, when we get to the last page, the liability insurance is the one we'll learn very soon, but we did not know when I presented Monday what it's going to be yet. They're still negotiating with local government. There's huge increases all across because of all the tornado claims last year. We're part of a state pool, local government insurance pool. And if you hadn't heard it before, I'll say it again, no commercial insurance company can compete with them. If they could, I encourage them to do it, but they can't. So, because the pool is made up of us and all the other cities and counties, but we have to share in those claims. And last year, even though we didn't have tornadoes, Middle Tennessee had a lot of them. They blew away schools that they insured. So we're expecting a fairly decent one. We put a budget number in there, and that number could change, but we don't have it yet. And it's always a June issue. It went up somewhat, for example, with our fire, but it didn't go up near what a commercial would because of the pool. It's pooled, and so people in Middle Tennessee might have had to pay a little higher premium because of our fire. Well, now we're probably going to have to pay a higher premium because of their tornadoes, if that makes any sense at all. But overall, we have put it out to open bid just to prove it several times, not several times, but a few times over the years, and commercial won't even, there's Tennessee Risk Management, which is the School Board Association, and Local Government Insurance Pool, and they're about the only two organizations that can compete because they're both very similar. And so that's where we're at on that. That liability line, of course, is because of wrecks and stuff, but that claims line goes up a lot.
Yeah, maybe at another meeting, we can talk about those wrecks. Not tonight.
About those what?
Wrecks.
Wrecks?
That's southern, I guess, but next page, county coroner medical exam. The only question I have is, these employees considered first responders or,
Talk about medical examiners?
yeah. For the mental,
They're not.
if they see something
Yeah,
or experience something that
it
makes them go.
possibly could be. They're not first responders because they only go when there's a death. But if there's a death, they go for sure. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to
and
make
that-
sure that.
and it
anybody
could
who
be a
needs-
similar.
Anybody who needs help, I want them to have advantage of this.
Yeah.
That's where I'm going.
And I think they will. I mean, if we know of it, the ones we've known of in the past, you know, they were able to get help before if they wanted to. We have to encourage them. Hey, there's insurance help, you know, that provides this or that. But now we'll just be able to do another level of it. And but yeah, if there was a situation that deemed it, I would have no problem with them doing it. But to answer your question, they don't answer the 911 calls. They only get called if there's a
Okay.
death. So.
All right. Next page is Juvenile Services Grant Program. It is a grant, JJS. Page 55, 911. We talked about this Monday. The new contract is going to be 700,000. I believe it's going to be a multi-year. Is it 4 years?
You're asking me. I don't know yet.
Okay.
The especially the term of it. Do they want to go 1, 2, 3, 4? I don't know. My personal thing was let's get an amount approved and go from there. I did verify what I said the other night. Cities approved their budget, and we were on the same page. But we can do that two different ways. Do we go 1 year and we have to address it every year, which I hate, but that's a possible way. Or we do multiple years and go ahead and plug in increases. The one that we're in right now was set at 650 for those number of years. So that's why it hadn't gone up. That's what the contract said. But
Mayor, this isn't exactly relevant, but are you still on the 911 board at the state level? I can't remember.
no. Let me tell you a quick one on that.
Oh, I walked into that one.
Yeah, you walked into that one. Their revenue problem is not us. I think everybody you talk to will admit that. It is not us. The revenue problem is state. Our local legislators helped us make some improvements to funding 911 Center a few years ago, but they set the bar too low. They set the base rate too low. So Mr. Tightwad had to fight to get the rate increase. We can't do it without their approval at the state. So working through the state 911 board, state organization was agreement we needed to raise the rate of the 911 fee. 911 fee is what's supposed to pay for 911, and it don't. So we argued to get it raised, and not everyone in politics agreed with that rate increase. They would rather you guys have to raise property taxes, so they didn't support the idea. And then when it came time for reappointment, they found somebody that hadn't supported the rate increase. But if you got to have more money in 911, the rate increase is where you get it. We're supplementing that budget. The 1.3 million now and 1.4 next year is our supplement to it. 911 fees are not what's right. Either the fee's not right or the state's keeping part of the money. I never could get to the bottom of that, and they didn't like me in Nashville, which I don't like that damn city anyway. But anyway, the funding issue is with the state. Either the rate's not right, and you can't raise it without them raising it, or they're not sending it all to us. So anytime anybody tells you they don't have enough money, tell them to get with your legislators and tell them to go fix the problem. That's what they're elected to do, isn't it? I can't fix it, but that one thing, I had input at least, and we got the agreement, and we all fought for it. But yeah, when it came reappointment time, I didn't get that letter. So go ahead.
I just say now we got 2 new legislators up there, and both of those served on the county commission. They would ask them to revisit this.
They're so afraid that local governments will cut funding, and I've never wanted to cut funding, but call up Matt and see how much they pay, or others. And some of them only what they have is the fee, which isn't enough. I mean, if your local governments don't supplant it somehow, they don't have enough. But when it switched from landlines to cell phones, they finally got that issue set. But again, we have flat revenues coming from the state, and Mr. Benton's heard me say this millions of times. You can't tell me that cell phones aren't growing. There's more cell phones out there today than there was a year ago. There's more people out there, and everybody has a cell phone, so there's got to be more cell phones. Well, if there's more cell phones and they're all paying the rate, then there's got to be more money going to the state. But there's not more coming back. And somewhere in there is where the problem is. I don't have a fix for it. I hate Nashville, but there's got to be a fix, and that's where the problem is. It needs to be fixed. I'll shut up, sorry.
Next time we talk to the legislators, let's remember that. Lori, if you'll put that on his agenda item. Commissioner Slater.
So who determines, Mayor, if it's a 1-year or 3-year contract?
3 of us.
The 3 of us, well, 4 of us really, don't forget Charleston. Yeah, there'll have to be an agreement that comes back to you all and to the city and everybody. A proposed. You see what I'm saying?
I can tell you, I'm for a 4-year contract.
I always like them, but they're getting tougher to get because of the way inflation has been lately. Everybody wants to talk about today's inflation for the next 4 years, and I hope Biden's not here in 4 years and we don't have 6 or 8% inflation. But everybody wants to do it on that, and so it's hard to get 4-year contracts right now unless you want to give away the farm to do them. But something will come back to you that you have to approve or disapprove or change, and the same thing with the city.
Because clearly, after we heard Mr. Benton speak Monday night, that's not enough money, and I understand and I hear what you're saying, but and if we sign a 3-year or 4-year contract, that's what it's going to be for those next 4 years, unless it has
Right.
a plan the next 3 years to increase every year.
I've got one that I'm working on now that I'll be bringing to you that'll have the increases built in, where I don't have to deal with it for a while.
For 911?
No, but that would be a possible with this one too. I just can't say what the agreement will be yet, but it could be a 1-year, a 4-year flat, or it could be a 1-year that changes. I mean, a 4-year that changes every year.
When does the contract expire? The current one?
Uh,
It's already expired?
End of this
of
month.
June?
So this contract ends on June 30th. We have to have a new contract in place by July 1.
Lots of contracts go after the end.
All right.
I've got other contracts that end
Yeah,
June
but-
30th also.
Just making sure we're.
So, yeah.
But you got 700,000 to negotiate with per your proposal. And
The city and county will be trying to put together a contract that includes 1.4 million from the city and county and X dollars from Charleston, which they have to be in agreement with the increase also, and then an agreed term. I'm just hesitating because I don't want to speak ahead. I don't know what that may be, but yeah.
All right. Any other questions on that, Mr. Alford? Please.
I just had one comment referencing what Mayor's talking about, more cell phones. I have to agree with him tremendously. I get phone calls about every 2 or 3 days from AT&T wanting me to get rid of my landline and go strictly to cell phones. So I know there's a lot more cell phones being bought because AT&T's trying to wipe out all landlines.
Hey, don't get rid of your landline.
I'm not going to. I tell them,
talk to you.
when I tell them, I say, you put me a tower out there, I'll stay with it.
Mom.
You're in a dead spot.
Just,
I don't want to take much of your time. First of all, Mr. Chairman, the reason I sit on the back row when I came in, after Monday night, I thought maybe.
you're fine. You're fine.
That's my.
But I'm going to ask you to be quick because we're way behind.
I understand. I just want to let you know that our last raise came July the 17th. We went to 650,000, and we had 2 raises, 2 years. Got up to the 650 before that, and we've been at 650 6 years this month. And I think, Mr. Mayor, you have the hardest job Bradley County. Appreciate anything that y'all have given us. Y'all have done a yeoman's job. That's all. Just wanted to clarify that we've been on this rate for 6 years. That's why I came up here with my hand out. Hope I wasn't too hard on you. Appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you.
Can I add to it?
Thank you, Mr. Benton, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. He's not saying it wrong, but where you might think there's a disagreement there with the terms, there hasn't been a raise in 6 years. there's been some tremendous raises. So some of you went home the other night thinking, those poor people, they haven't got a raise. We recently implemented a very good step plan. We have approved raises often, every year, I'm sure. So what he's referring to is the amount of the contract hasn't changed for 6 years. But they still have multi-millions in the bank fund balance too. You don't talk about a rainy day fund. But the important thing is, don't think that the employees haven't gotten raises. Now, are they overpaid? No, and we need to pay them more, just like some other departments we could talk about. But some went home, I know, because he used the word, we haven't had a raise. They've had raises. They have vacancies like everybody else, and we don't know what to do about it. We've implemented a step plan. We've put some raises in place. They've still got vacancies, and I have no doubt they probably will, but hopefully she's making headway. It's the fee that we pay, city, county, and Charleston, that hasn't changed because of the contract in those years. So just further explain, not to contradict anything he said, but just to further explain.
Anything else on?
There was some raises. I'm telling you, in this step plan, there was some raises you wouldn't believe. Now, I ain't going to go there, but raises there has been. It's just the amount of the contract.
Anything else? Thank you, David. You've been patient over there, so I appreciate you. All right, going on to the next page. I think we're on page 57.
56, local health.
No. Local health, I apologize. Local health. I'm brain dead now. What is that? Mayor, what is local health? Is that, it's not medical, is it? Oh,
It's a health
Tennessee. Say, oh, they're getting a nice overhaul in their building and all that. Right?
Yeah,
They're on Dooley Street.
they're going to get a nice overhaul where, this budget doesn't reflect that. They actually had some money in, I took it out because it's gonna be coming as a grant at some point, and then there'll be a huge amount spent over there, and we've got our $145,000 match in ARP.
All right. And for what I understand, I don't even want to go there. There is increase in COVID thing. Anyway, next page, 57. SPCA. Oh, I couldn't wait to get this page. I'm assuming, which I hate to do, 226 is the agreed upon amount now with their board.
It seems to be. I mean, I don't have a contract yet, but I will be coming back to you with that one in the next week or two. I think we're going to have the agreement, yes.
Thank you. Any questions on that? Seeing none, moving on to EMS. Director Gary is ambulance.
Ambulances,
And we are finished with Dooley Street.
it says finished. It's supposed to be happening next week, but we do have that last phase left at Dooley Street. You know, are you very familiar with Dooley? We did the open area in the hallways, the bathrooms, but the bedrooms we did not do, and they're getting done hopefully next week. When we get that done, it's finished.
Okay.
The ambulances and one vehicle, I believe, are in ARP instead of in here.
Okay. Any questions on EMS? Seeing none, moving on. Health Services State with a 145,000 matching in AR.
There's where
APR.
the grant shows, and if that amount's right, it's already in the budget and also in the revenue. This whole $2 million budget is treated as a grant, so the revenues offset it.
Moving on to the next account, General Health Assistance. Nothing there.
It's not there anymore, so it don't.
Yeah. Moving on to other local welfare services, 104,000 is a contract, right? Anything on there? I don't think so.
It's not a contract, but you're familiar with the building up on the hill that we're talking about. We own the building, we lease it to the state for this program, and that's the amount that
When I said contract, I meant the lease or whatever.
we pay into this program, and they used it to draw down federal funds.
Count 557 other waste disposal zeroed.
I think that's your litter grant that gets amended when it comes in, I believe.
Next one is a car seat grant. That, fine. Then we get into, I guess, the nonprofits, or at least one of them, Life Bridges. 4,000, that's what we gave them last year.
They asked for an increase, but I put it back at this year's amount.
Then we get into Cleveland Community Services, that 107, that reflects the amendment, the prepaid thing that we did not too long ago.
They bought a vehicle that you all gave them $10,000 for, and so I took it out of this.
Then we get into, I always say this wrong, recreation tournaments. I was just making sure. Are you? I know, man. Peanut gallery. Anything on this one on page 66? Nothing? Good. And the next one is Parks and Rec. Non-employees, two asterisks there, capital outlay, 10,000. And lights, 65,000. The lights on Menace Road Park, is that what that is?
Yeah.
Only 65,000 for lights? I thought-
No, lights in ARP, and then 65 is for the pickleball and BMX. It's also in ARP.
Oh.
Lights is 800,000.
That's what I thought. It's in one fund 128. We'll see here real quick in a second. Commissioner Offer, please.
And are we getting bids on that, or is it straight out? I would think we could do a lot better than that if we got bids.
Talk about lights.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree, except isn't that one of those that lighting company does those things around? I don't know, but if there's a bid situation, we'll bid it, yeah. I know when we replaced them at the ballpark, it was that company.
Well, that's the only company I think he likes to deal with. That's why I asked.
But if there's another one that can bid on it, yeah,
I think there's probably several out there if somebody just do a little research.
and being new ones, it may be different in adding one up here. These are all new, so yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all.
Especially, on any of those, you could probably get one total bid for all that project. I just think it needs to be looked at carefully and bid out.
Well, I agree. That big one, we've never done that much before, but yeah, and then we're not there yet. So once the budget is approved, we'll look at bidding it for sure. The pickleball and BMX, there's BMX. I don't remember what it's called. They've got some big event that's willing to come to Cleveland this year, this summer.
That's about the only time I've ever heard of that place being used.
No, it's used, but this is, it could be used more for events if we did, and we've never done a lot. We've just basically provided. But anyway, they've asked for some improvements, and most of them he couldn't get done in the existing budget, so there's some more money there for some things. They're not asking for much, but that might get that ball rolling a little more. But most people don't even know we have one, like you said, Mr. Alford, but we do. It's a good thing.
Commissioner Winters, please.
We move back.
Sure.
This spring, and children in baseball on the gun. Commissioner, I'm sorry. I think I'm getting on Commissioner Alford's concerns too about there is an opportunity to recoup money with tournaments. And, we don't have to deal a lot of money with fields, but turf fields are out there in Dalton all the way up to Knoxville, all over the place. But there is a need. I'm not saying just from county money, but there is a great revenue potential when you start talking about hotel, motel, and you start talking about opportunity with restaurants, and with all the building going on here and people wanting to have consumers up here, there's a real draw in the sports. If you made the fields where they could do flag football and you could do all kind of other stuff, But that takes a consortium. It's not just the county per se. But when we look at recreation tournaments and we're looking at less than $15,000 in tournaments, you know, that's an area to look at for revenue as well as opportunity for local students. But just tossing that out there, I didn't want to let that go by. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I did not put him up to this. But I do agree.
And
But I think that's.
I'm a consumer.
Is
My
the mayor,
kids
is
go
the
to
mayor
those.
saying, you know, it's about priorities. Budgets are about priorities.
I know.
And we're hitting some big ones. ARP's helped us out over the last year and will in the next year. And, I agree with you. But, I think this budget hit some high priorities and.
Sure.
And
I'm not saying
maybe
this-
those that come off, that'll come up.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
I know some of you are gonna be pushing for the turf in the future, and I don't have a problem. Heck, our football fields have got turf, so we gotta have turf everywhere, and that's okay.
When
It's
it
never
reaches-
been my top priority. It's not that
Yeah.
I'm against it, but
And
And
don't get me wrong, it's not my top priority. What we're doing here is that, but I think when we're looking at 15,000 we have in ours, we gotta look at city, county, and all ought to look
that
at
budget's
the
misleading. There's not
consortium.
a weekend in the spring and summer that you go by our ballpark, there's not a tournament
And
going on.
I'm there, yeah. I get
So,
it.
Unless it's raining.
We're doing them. This here was a thing that we had to set up a few years ago to show the additional expenses for those things. But no, we have tournaments all the time. Now, Menace Road, we can't because of the lights missing. And then what they are telling us that if we would turf them, that we could have more and attract more. So I have no problem with any of that.
I can see with the same fields we got, if we just turfed in fields for a while.
But
it's
you look
hard
at the
to
amount of
see.
money that hotel motel tax brings in, I would argue that most of it is brought in by our ball tournaments.
But that-
Because every weekend, people are spending the night in Cleveland and Bradley County for tournaments.
But most of it's.
But
most
it
of it's
shows
local.
up in hotel motel. It doesn't show up in our budget.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the request has come in to take a 5-minute break. So we'll honor that. So we are at 12:45, 5 minutes, so put it 10 till. We are in.
Hey,